Chapter 985. Although these two supreme divine abilities were only formed by the two of them using external forces to forcefully combine their basic great divine abilities, their power might not be too different from a true supreme divine ability. However, as someone who had already achieved a supreme divine ability, Lu Ping was naturally able to clearly sense the difference between the two. Just like now, even though the two of them had suddenly joined forces to attack Lu Ping, even though the combined power of these two supreme divine abilities was even more powerful than ordinary supreme divine abilities, Lu Ping was able to quickly cast the Sea of All Rivers sword technique through the thin water, ever-flowing sword in an extremely short period of time. Compared to the supreme divine abilities that were cast with external forces, Lu Ping had less time to prepare. Although this time was very short, in a battle between experts, victory and defeat was often decided by a hair's breadth. Moreover, the supreme divine abilities that Lu Ping had condensed from 6 great divine abilities were originally more powerful than those that were condensed from 3 or 4 basic divine abilities. It was precisely because of this lack of time to prepare that Lu Ping's Sea of All Rivers sword technique was able to block the two's joint attacks in time and completely annihilate them. However, Lu Ping was also pushed 5.5 miles away by the tremendous power produced when the two attacks collided with Lu Ping's technique. Seeing that Lu Ping was able to withstand their supreme divine abilities unscathed, an inexplicable look of shock flashed across their faces. But still, they looked at Yuan Feixiang and said with a smile, "Brother Lu is really good. But I wonder what medium did Brother Lu use to condense the supreme divine abilities?" However, before Yuan Feixiang could get an answer from Lu Ping, he heard Lu Ping's loud shout, "It's impolite not to reciprocate. The two of you, take this move from me as well." Crack! As soon as Lu Ping's voice fell, a blue bolt of lightning in the sky had already struck down towards Wu Shihuan's head. Wu Shihuan's expression changed, and the surface of his treasured clothes flashed with rays of mysterious light. Layer after layer of protective shields formed and began to expand outwards. Spirit treasure. Lu Ping's gaze at Wu Shihuan immediately narrowed. In water divine thunder? No one was more familiar with thunder techniques than Yuan Feixiang. The exclamation of surprise stopped abruptly. Yuan Feixiang's expression changed slightly, and the purple thunderclouds around her suddenly exploded with a series of explosions. As soon as the water divine sword missed, it immediately disappeared into the air, while the thunderclouds around Yuan Feixiang thinned by nearly half. Invisible sword technique. Is this the invisible sword technique that was famous in the cultivation world of Failing Sect? It really is amazing. Wu Shihuan had a spirit treasure in hand. Although Lu Ping's in water divine lightning was powerful and unexpected, it paled in comparison to Wu Shihuan's spirit treasure. Although the in water divine lightning broke through 12 layers of the protective barrier, it was powerless against the remaining 6 layers. It could only slowly dissipate into the air. And because Wu Shihuan had the protection of the spirit treasure, he had the time to see the scene of Lu Ping using the invisible sword technique to attack Yuan Fei. However, when he turned his head and saw that the protective shield of the treasure robe, which was a spirit treasure, had been penetrated by 2/3 by Lu Ping's great magical power, his smile slowly froze on his face. The same was true for Yuan Feixiang. The shapeless sword incantation's indefensible means made him secretly fearful. If he had to defend himself with all his might, then it would be fine. But which cultivator would always put all their focus on defending against this seemingly omnipresent shapeless sword? Lu Ping took a deep look at the layer of purple lightning mist that lingered around Yuan's body. Then, in front of the two of them, he stretched out his hand and recalled the nether water sword from the air. Only then did he smile and say, "The two of you are very powerful. This Lu greatly admires you." Seeing that Lu Ping had recalled the nether water sword, Yuan Feixiang's expression seemed to relax. He smiled and said, "Brother Lu must be joking. Brother Lu's strength is not inferior to ours. The power of that supreme sword technique and magical power just now is even more amazing." Wu Shihuan said straightforwardly, "The reason why I came to the North Sea this time, other than to investigate the cause of Kuan Yu's death, is similar to Bai Jishan's. I wanted to see how amazing the North Sea Sword Immortal really is. Today, I have seen that the North Sea Sword Immortal truly lives up to her name. In fact, whether it was by Jishan, Wu Shihuan, or even Yuan Feixiang, when they heard the name of the North Sea Sword Immortal, they more or less snorted disdainfully, thinking that it was just a shortcut. Wu Shihuan and Bai Jishan kept saying that they wanted to come to the North Sea to see the North Sea Sword Immortal, but their original intention was to teach the North Sea Sword Immortal a lesson. At this time, Yuan Feixiang said, I haven't seen Brother Bai appear. It seems that he has been defeated by Brother Liu. Brother Bai has always been arrogant. If Brother Liu doesn't go to the Central Plains this time, then so be it. But if you do, please be careful. Lu Ping did not expect that Bai Jishan, a disciple of a large sect, would have such a reputation. He cupped his hands in thanks and said, In that case, many thanks to Brother Yuan. Yuan Feixiang said with a smile, This is just a small matter. Dongi Laozu's face was as dark as water, and he said, If that's the case, Jinling Lu Tianping, please remove the seal on my nephew He. Lu Tianling's expression changed, and he sneered. Senior Dongi, you have a good plan. You failed to take our sect's mind, and you were caught in the act. Not only did you bring him back without saying a word, but you also want our sect's disciple to remove the seal on him. How can there be such an easy thing in the world? At this time, Gua Tianshan, who was behind Lu Tianling, also said angrily, That's right. If this goes on, in the future, if someone invades our sect's property again and kills our cultivators, should we send these cultivators back to their own sects? Do you really think our sect is a pushover? The cultivators of the various sects cursed in their hearts. Who in the North Sea would dare to treat Jinling as a pushover? It was obvious that Jinling and the Songhai sect were scheming against each other. Unfortunately, Jinling was a bit more skilled, and the Songhai sect was the one that got the upper hand. Now, they couldn't refute it. Dongi Laozu's expression changed, and his lips moved, as if he was discussing something with the other Songhai sect cultivators beside him. After a while, he said, Our sects don't need to talk in riddles. What does your sect want? Just state your conditions. Lu Tianling glanced at Tianfan and Tianxue, the two Laozu, who hadn't spoken since they came to the Ice Palace. As if he had gotten some confirmation, he said, Your sect's share of spirit stones should be the same as Haiyan sect and Shuiyin Pavilion. Many cultivators of the Songhai sect immediately showed anger, but Lu Tianling's expression didn't change. He said, Whether it's allowed or not, it's all up to your sect. After a pause, Lu Tianling Laozu said, Your sect must give us an explanation. Dongi Laozu's face turned green and red. He wanted to refuse several times, but in the end, he still said dejectedly, Your sect is a bit more skilled. Taoist Lu Tianping, please let go of my martial nephew He. This was admitting defeat in front of Laozu and Jinling's conditions. Lu Tianling signaled to Lu Ping, and Lu Ping smiled. Streams of water seeped out of He Shiyun's body and gathered on the ground to form a water snake-like stream. It wriggled toward Lu Ping and disappeared into Lu Ping's shoes. He Shiyun, who was originally unconscious, was like a drowning person who was suddenly punched in the chest. His body suddenly shook, and he spat out a mouthful of water. He suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up from the ground, shouting, Lu Tianping, what kind of method is this? His voice stopped abruptly. He Shiyun saw that the scene in front of him seemed to have greatly exceeded his expectations. Donghua Laozu, who was at the side, hurriedly signaled him to sit behind him and told He Shiyun everything that had happened. He Shiyun's expression immediately changed. He looked at Lu Ping with a complicated gaze, but the trace of fear couldn't be hidden at all. When He Shiyun woke up, Gang Master Zheng of the Four Seas sect suddenly stood up and said, Fellow Taoists, the Four Seas sect currently has enough shares in Frost Island. We won't touch the Wandering Sail sect's share. Chapter 986. Sect leader Zheng's words surprised the North Sea cultivators. At the same time, they couldn't help but look at sect leader Zheng in a higher light. However, most of them looked past sect leader Zheng and at Yuan Feixiang behind him. The Four Seas sect was quite sensible. Even if the Four Seas sect was related to the Yuan family, the North Sea was remote after all. The Yuan family couldn't support the Four Seas sect against the entire North Sea forces. After all, the 4C sect was only supported by sect leader Zheng, an early Dharma adept. It was still far from being comparable to the many forces in the North Sea. Once the 4C sect gave up that 25% share, not only would the original 25% share not be broken because of the Yuan family, but the other sects in the North Sea would also not make things too difficult for the 4C sect in other aspects in the future. However, after sect leader Zheng gave up the share that originally belonged to the Wandering Sail sect, the other large and small forces immediately set their sights on this share. Several forces had already begun to state their reasons for getting this share, and some even tried to join forces to get this share. Unexpectedly, at this time, Laozu Daoxian suddenly said to Lu Tianling, "Sect leader Lu, do you still remember the agreement between Brother Tianxiang and our sect's brother Daoshang?" Tianxiang, Daoshang. As soon as these two names were mentioned, all the cultivators in the Ice Palace fell silent. These were the two most powerful cultivators in the entire North Sea cultivation world. They could almost be regarded as the symbol of the North Sea cultivation world. Lu Tianling immediately understood and said, "Of course I remember. That day, Senior Daoshang and Uncle Tianxiang had an agreement that the Qiao family's share of the Spirit Stone Mine would be handed over to our sect. As such, we also support your sect in controlling the Wandering Sail sect's share." Ancestor Daoxian immediately smiled from ear to ear. He said, "In that case, many thanks, sect leader Lu. Our sect wishes to obtain the Roaming Sail sect share." With sect leader Lu's support, does anyone from the various sects have any objections? The situation in the Ice Palace today had made it clear that the True Spirit sect and the Mystic Spirit sect were working together to suppress the Blue Sea sect and redraw the North Sea sphere of influence. Facing these two sects' blatant reciprocation, most of the sects in the North Sea dared not say anything. However, at this time, the Liao family was anxious. The Liao family had received the support of the Lu family of Central Plains, and Liao Ruinjia himself had successfully condensed his Dharma power. This was the moment when he was full of ambition, hoping to become one of the 12 small forces of the North Sea and gain the right to speak on Frost Island. Originally, the Qiao family, who had already lost their Dharma adept, had unexpectedly been cut off by Jinling in Central Plains. How could Liao Ruinjia be satisfied with this? It should be known that the Liao family was only able to participate in this Frost Island meeting because the two Dharma adepts of the Lu family had lured away Qing Shizhuang from the Crystal Palace. The Liao family originally did not have the right to object to the decisions of the two elders, Daoxing and Tianxiang. However, the Liao family already has a Dharma adept and has just become a small force in the North Sea. According to the rules of the North Sea, we should replace the Qiao family as one of the 12 small forces of the North Sea. Isn't it a little inappropriate to just transfer the Qiao family share to Jinling? Liao Ruinjia thought about it a few times, but in the face of profit, he still decided to stroke Jinling's beard. Unexpectedly, as soon as Liao Ruinjia's voice faded, Ma Shifang, who was behind Wu Shihuan, was the first to laugh. "Does your Liao family think that you can do whatever you want in the overseas cultivation world, just because you have the Lu family in the Central Plains? Not to mention the death of an alchemy master of our sect at the hands of the Lu family, even the death of our sect's Kunan Zhenren and the death of Xianling sect's LV Shuheng are still suspicious. How can the Liao family be qualified to be one of the 12 small forces?" Liao Ruinjia immediately shut his mouth. At this time, he had already seen clearly that not only Jinling and Xianling sect, but also the Crystal Palace had already made up their minds to punish the Liao family. Liao Ruinjia wanted to defend himself, but he was afraid that the situation would only worsen, so he could only remain silent. However, his heart was filled with hatred. After a round of debate in the Ice Palace, Jinling and Xianling sect emerged as the final winners. Jinling had 1.5 share, while Xianling sect had another 15%. On the other hand, the Blue Sea sect, which had been unusually tough before, had suffered a great loss. Not only had they been abandoned by the Xian sect for no reason, but Jinling had also captured He Shiyun alive and extorted 25% of the share. The North Sea sect, the second most powerful force, had fallen to the Haiyan sect and Shuiyin Pavilion. Just as the meeting of the Ice Palace was coming to an end, a Dharma adept from the Gold Sword sect finally could not hold it in any longer and said loudly, "Dare I ask all the sects, The Wandering Sail sect lost their share of the Spirit Stone mine on Frost Island because their Dharma adept was seriously injured and on the verge of death. However, the AI Family Island's Dharma adept was also seriously injured. Why did all the sects Laozu not mention this? When Lu Tianling heard someone mention the AI Family Island, he immediately opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the voice. He saw an unfamiliar early Dharma adept speaking passionately. "Oh, you look very unfamiliar. How should I address you?" Jin Tian's face was red. When he had entered the Dharma stage, he had also held a Dharma meeting. Unfortunately, the Gold Sword sect was weak, so naturally, there were no adepts from the 9 great sections. However, the appearance of every Dharma adept was a major event that affected the entire North Sea training world. No matter how lowly Jin Tian's background was, he would definitely not fall to the point where no one in the North Sea Dharma adepts could recognize him. Jin Tian angrily cupped his hands at Lu Tianling and said, "I am Jin Tian, a second-generation disciple of the Gold Sword sect. Sect leader Lu, you are too kind." After pausing for a while, Jin Tian continued, "My Gilded Sword sect now has 3 Dharma adepts and dozens of core forging adepts. We are one of the best among the 12 small forces. My Gilded Sword sect would like to request the patriarchs of the various sects to agree to give up 25% of the AI clan shares to my Gilded Sword sect." After Jintian Laozu's speech, there was a short period of silence in the Ice Palace. Many of the adepts looked at AI Tsuani, the AI Family Island's Laozu, who had not expressed his opinion all this while. AI Tsuani, who had always been smiling, now had an extremely ugly expression on his face. However, he did not refute on the spot. Instead, he quietly waited for the situation to develop. AI Tsuani's seemingly weak performance encouraged Jintian Laozu's momentum even more. His speech in the Ice Palace became more and more aggressive. Lu Ping looked at Jintian Laozu with some pity. He wondered how Jintian would feel when he found out that the AI Family Island was also backed by a force from the Middle-earth. Moreover, it was the Heavenly Moon sect that was able to stop the Crystal Palace from expanding into the Middle-earth for thousands of years. Speaking of the AI Family Island, Lu Ping thought of AI Shuyao, who was a woman disguised as a man. Back then, the two of them had worked together several times in the 7-star Grotto Heaven, but after that, there was no news of her in the North Sea. However, her big brother, AI Buatao, had become famous in the North Sea. He was a famous late core forging adept among the 3rd generation of adepts. Lu Tianling Laozu ignored Jin Tian Laozu's impassioned speech. Instead, he smiled at AI Tsuani Laozu and asked, "Mr. AI's injury was left on Frost Island, right? Is it better now?" AI Tsuani hurriedly said, "Thank you for your concern, sect leader Lu. The old man's injury has recovered a lot." At this time, Laozu from Linggu sect suddenly said, "Sect leader Lu is right. The injury on Mr. AI's body was caused by Blood Azura's sneak attack during the battle on Frost Island. Mr. AI contributed to the final preservation of the Frost Island's mineral vein. If we deny the AI Family Island's share of spirit stones, wouldn't it be disappointing? Then, who would work to protect Frost Island in the future?" Sanming Laozu from Chongming sect also echoed, "That's right. The share of the AI Family Island cannot be reduced." Jintian Laozu from the Gilt Sword sect was naturally unconvinced, and the two sides started a war of words again. Lu Ping, who was watching from the side, understood that what Lu Tianling had said before was probably because of the Heavenly Moon sect behind the AI Family Island. However, the Linggu sect and Chongming sect were not because of the Heavenly Moon sect, but because the rise of the Gilt Sword sect had threatened their position in the North Sea. Among the 9 great sects of the North Sea, the Jade Sword sect, Feiyu sect, Chongming sect, and Linggu sect were ranked at the bottom. Among the 4 sects, the number of Dharma adepts did not exceed 5, and there was only 1 mid-Dharma adept. Strictly speaking, these 4 sects could not even be counted as mid-sized forces in other cultivation worlds. Only in the North Sea could they be recognized as the 9 great sects. In fact, among the Chongming sect and Linggu sect, there were only 4 Dharma adepts each. Now that the Gilt Sword sect suddenly had 3 Dharma adepts, these 2 sects felt that their positions were being threatened. Hence, The Dharma adepts of these two sects could not wait to join forces and start to suppress the Gilt Sword sect. There was another more important reason, and that was that up until now, none of the second-generation disciples of these four sects had been promoted to Dharma adepts. However, the Gilt Sword sect had sent out a second-generation disciple like Zhan Tian Laozu. This inadvertently gave the North Sea cultivation world the wrong impression that the Jade Sword sect, Feiyu sect, Chongming sect, and Linggu sect had no successors. Although the Gilt Sword sect did not have a mid-Dharma adept, the second-generation disciples were slowly rising, and in the future, they would definitely surpass these four sections. Under the strong suppression of these four sects, the Gilt Sword sect could only angrily accept the result of their defeat. However, looking at Zhen Tian Laozu's attitude, even if they failed, they would probably use other methods to make up for their losses. However, this was not something that the various sects in the Ice Palace cultivators were worried about, even though from Lu Ping's point of view, the Gilt Sword sect was most likely going to be badly beaten. The meeting of the Ice Palace came to an end amidst all sorts of accidents and arguments. The Songhai sect was the first to leave, followed closely by the Gilt Sword sect's disciples. Liao Ruinjia even quietly disappeared. The remaining forces could only watch as Jinling and Xianling sect returned with a full load. The teleporter in front of the Jinling Palace, Guotianshan and Laozu, would continue to stay and guard Frost Island. Lu Tianling, Tian Fan, Tian Shui, and Lu Ping were about to leave, but unexpectedly, the teleporter suddenly flashed. A cultivator from Zhenling was rushing to Frost Island. Lu Tianling and the others could only wait for this person to be teleported before using the teleporter. Unexpectedly, when the light faded, the person who appeared on the teleporter was Zhong Jian. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. He said, "Senior brother Zhong, why are you here?" Zhong Jian came out of the teleporter and was stunned to see Laozu standing in front of the teleporter. He only reacted after hearing Lu Ping's question and said, "Disciple was just about to look for senior uncles and senior grandaunts. There's a problem with the mineral vein that was just taken back from the Songhai sect. Senior Grand Ani Tian Xiang, Senior Grand Ani Tian Jiang, and Senior Grand Ani Tian Cheng have already been sent to the Middle Earth to replace Senior Grand Ani Tian Qin. He also told me to inform Sect Master that after the matter on Frost Island is over, Senior Grand Ani Tian Fan and Senior Grand Ani Tian Shui will be guarding Sky Spirit Mountain. Sect Master and Junior Brother Lu should also hurry over as soon as possible." Chapter 987. Zhong Jian's news shocked all the Jinling Laozu present, but Lu Ping noticed something from Zhong Jian's words. His heart skipped a beat, and he said, "Master Tianjiang and Master Tianlu, together with Uncle Master Tiancheng and Tianqin, could it be that they discovered a group of volcanoes in the Northwest Sea? Tianjiang, Tianlu, Tiancheng, and Tianqin. The four Laozu were the practitioners of Jinling who were most proficient in fire. If Lu Ping, the master alchemist, was added, then all the masters of fire in Jinling would be gathered together. Other than the group of volcanoes, Lu Ping really could not think of any other reason for Laozu's celestial phenomenon to come personally and gather so many Dharma adepts of the sect. Lu Ping's words made many of the Laozu present excited. Zhong Jian looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, "Junior Lu is right, but it is not a group of volcanoes." Spiritual Master Xianwei deduced that there is a fire vein hidden under the sea based on the direction of that branch, and reported it to the sect. Because the sect leader was dealing with Frost Island, Uncle Master Tian Shu did not dare to act on his own, so he reported it to Uncle Master Celestial Phenomenon. When Lu Ping heard that it was only Spiritual Master Xuanwei's speculation, the excitement on his face immediately faded a little. He said, "Just because of Senior Xuanwei's speculation, even Uncle Master Celestial Phenomenon was alerted?" Lu Tianling Laozu said, "Let's not talk about this for now. Since it was Uncle Master Celestial Phenomenon who summoned us, even if we go for nothing, we have to go." Lu Ping nodded. Although Lu Ping still had some doubts about Spiritual Master Xuanwei's methods, now is obviously not the time to talk about this. Thus, he began to insert spirit stones into the teleportation portal and prepared to activate it. Zhongjian explained, "Senior Xianwei has already found and opened a fire vein along the branch, and when he opened it, He also subdued a high-grade mystic-level heaven and earth spirit fire. It is because of this heaven and earth spirit fire that Uncle Master's celestial phenomenon finally decided to summon Lao-Zu to the Northwest Sea secretly. Hearing that a heaven and earth spirit fire had already appeared in the fire vein, many Lao-Zu sect members couldn't help but feel a lot more anxious. Lu Tianling thought for a moment, then turned to Tian Shui Lao-Zu behind him and said, "Uncle Master, Tianling Mountain still needs the two of you to hold the fort. After the two of you return to the sect, you can choose some outstanding alchemists, blacksmiths, and core forging realm cultivators who practice fire attribute cultivation techniques. If this fire vein is only one, then it's fine. However, if it really leads to a group of underwater volcanoes, it's hard to say when the time comes, all the sects will fight over it." Tian Shui Lao-Zu nodded. "You guys go ahead. All the sect's affairs will be handled by me and your Uncle Master Tian Fan." After the teleportation array flickered, everyone arrived at Floating Island. Mayu had been waiting anxiously for a long time. When he saw Lu Tianling, he hurriedly said, "Uncle Master, just now, Daoist Xinwei sent a message. Tian Xiang, Tian Jiang, Tian Lu, and Tian Cheng, the 4 Lao-Zu sect members, brought him along to explore the fire vein. From the looks of it, the size of the underground fire vein is far beyond everyone's imagination. Tian Xiang, Lao-Zu sect member, urged him to rush there as soon as he sees you. At the same time, prepare to gather all the disciples who practice fire attribute cultivation techniques." Lu Ping couldn't help but admire his teacher's thoroughness. Lu Tianling passed a jade tablet to Ma Yu and said, "Take this jade tablet back to Tianling Mountain and meet Tian Shui Lao-Zu. Tell her to gather all the disciples who practice fire attribute cultivation techniques as soon as possible." When Lu Ping and his teacher left Floating Island, he saw his teacher release a mid-stage core forging Wind Luan. He leaped onto the Wind Luan's back and flew towards the Northwest Sea region. When Lu Ping saw this, he also released Lu Qin. Standing on the Green Luan's back, Lu Qin, who was already late-stage core forging realm, raised his head and let out a long cry. With a few flaps of his wings, he caught up with Lu Tianling and Lao-Zu's Wind Luan. Lu Ping also recognized this Wind Luan. It had once transformed into an old man in the palace of Chonghua. It often did things like cleaning and gardening. When Lu Ping first saw it, Lu Qin was still a little bird that had yet to transform. Lu Tianling saw that Lu Ping's Green Luan was always half a body's length behind his mount, so he moved his feet and stood on Lu Qin's back with Lu Ping. At the same time, he put away his own mount. Lu Qin let out a long cry. There was a hint of excitement in his expression, as if he was very excited to be able to use his flying talent to the extreme. He flapped his wings, and the surrounding white clouds quickly disappeared behind the two of them. In a short moment, they were tens of miles away. Lu Tianling Lao-Zu looked at Lu Qin under his feet and suddenly asked, "In the future, I'm afraid you'll have to go to the Fire Luan clan, right?" Lu Ping was startled. It seemed that his teacher knew a lot about the direct descendants of the top-level monsters, so he said, "Yes, disciple will try to go to the East Sea before Lu Qin enters the Dharma realm." Lu Tianling Lao-Zu nodded and said, "It's best if it's before she condenses her gold core and enters the late core forging stage." When the two of them arrived at the sea where the branch of the mineral vein was located, the situation here made Lu Ping and Lu Tianling Lao-Zu frown. With the support of Tian Xiang Lao-Zu and the others, Daoist Xinwei boldly opened a hidden fire vein. However, the size of this fire vein and the other fire veins behind it were obviously beyond everyone's expectations. The strong earthquake was instantly felt by more than 100 miles around. In the middle of the mixed mineral vein that was jointly mined by the various sects in the North Sea, the cultivators who were mining the spirit materials felt it especially clearly, so dozens of cultivators from various sects rushed in the direction of the earthquake to check it out. However, when they arrived, the seawater in this area had already begun to heat up. Steaming water vapor rose from the surface of the sea, shrouding the sea in a thick mist. Moreover, there was a layer of red fire poison condensed in this mist. After this group of cultivators arrived, a few of the bolder ones rushed into the mist first. On the same day, they were poisoned by the fire poison, and their whole body became hot. The moisture in their body began to leak out, and their whole body looked abnormally withered. Fortunately, these people didn't go far into the mist, and the cultivators behind them hurriedly dragged these unconscious cultivators out. At this time, Lu Ping and Lu Tianling just happened to arrive at this time. When Lu Ping and Lu Tianling saw the situation in front of them, they guessed that what happened here couldn't be hidden anymore. Even if they captured these 20 to 30 cultivators, at most, they would only be able to delay the reaction time of the various sects in the North Sea. Among these 20 or so cultivators, there were obviously a few from Zhenling's sect. When they saw the sect leader Lu Tianling and Sword Immortal of Water Lu Tianping and Lao Zhu together, they were immediately overjoyed. They hurriedly went forward and saluted. Then, one of the cultivators turned to Lu Ping and said, "Martial Uncle Tianling, Junior Kai Zishu just mistakenly entered the poisonous mist, and now his life is in danger. Martial Uncle, please save him." When the disciples from other sects heard that the people in front of them were actually the sect leader of Zhenling and Lu Tianping and Lao Zhu, they were immediately as quiet as cicadas in winter. However, when they heard the request of this Zhenling disciple, a few of the bolder cultivators also tried to say, "Senior Tianling, please save my senior brother. He is also poisoned by the fire poison. Tianling Lao Zhu, please save my junior brother." Senior Tianling. Lu Ping glanced at the teacher next to him. Seeing Lu Tianling nod slightly, Lu Ping understood and went forward to check on the unconscious fourth-generation disciple of Zhenling, Kai Zishu. He couldn't help but frown. When the Zhenling cultivator saw Lu Ping's expression, his heart suddenly jumped and he said, "Martial Uncle, can Junior Kai be saved?" Lu Ping reached out and pointed at the unconscious Kai Zishu's forehead. A bluish-purple true yuan seeped from his fingertip into Kai Zishu's forehead and then spread throughout his body. After a while, the true yuan that had spread throughout his body began to gather at his forehead again. Then, along with a trace of red, it gathered at Lu Ping's fingertip. Finally, Lu Ping took it back. Kai Zishu, who was originally haggard and burning hot, was like a withered tree that had been given a new lease of life. His dried skin recovered, and his red face gradually returned to normal. Then, Kai Zishu suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up. While looking around, he said, "Be careful, this fog is poisonous." The Zhenling cultivator from before quickly reminded, "Junior Kai, the sect leader and martial Uncle Tianling are here." At this time, Kai Zishu also saw Lu Tianling and Lu Ping. After hearing his senior brother's reminder, he immediately realized that he had been saved by the sect leader and Lu Tianping Lao Zhu, so he quickly bowed and thanked them. When the cultivators from the other sects saw that Lu Ping had saved the dying Kai Zishu, they didn't have time to marvel at Lu Ping's heaven-defying methods. They hurriedly begged Lu Ping to save the poisoned cultivators from the other sections. Lu Ping looked at the 20 or so people and said slowly, "In fact, all of you have been poisoned by the fire poison. Although you can't detect it now, it's only because everyone has different levels of poison. If you want to be cured, you only need to swallow these 2 bottles of pills." With that, Lu Ping threw the 2 bottles of pills into the hands of the Zhenling cultivator from before. The cultivator didn't even think about it. After opening the jade bottle, he directly stuffed a pill into his mouth and then stuffed the jade bottle into another cultivator's mouth. The cultivator hesitated for a moment. When he saw that the Zhenling disciple who handed him the jade bottle had a happy expression on his face, he immediately floated on the surface of the sea and began to meditate to refine it. Then, he also poured out a pill and swallowed it. Although the other cultivators were still hesitant, under Lu Ping's cold gaze, they didn't hold on for long. They all swallowed the pills and began to circulate their spells to speed up the refining process. After refining, a few people first stuffed the pills into the mouths of a few unconscious cultivators and then swallowed them. Only Kai Zishu was still standing on the surface of the sea. Lu Ping pushed the Zhenling disciple who was refining the pill. The disciple who had fallen into silence because of refining the pill suddenly woke up and heard Lu Ping ask, "What's your name?" The 4th-generation Zhenling disciple quickly said, "I'm Suzy Qin, a disciple of Master Xianjian." Xianjian was Zhongjian. He didn't expect him to be Zhongjian's disciple, so Lu Ping looked at Kai Zishu. Kai Zishu was smart and knew that this was a chance to show his face, so he quickly said, I'm a disciple of Master Xinlei. Lu Ping smiled and said, "They're all acquaintances. The two of you take these disciples away from this sea area and find a place to hide them. They won't wake up for 3 days. The two of you have to ensure that they won't be found by others for 3 days. This will be a credit. When the time comes, just go to Huangli Island and ask for 2 good treasures from Lu Debao." Chapter 988. Kai Zishu and Su Ziqin were overjoyed to hear this. Huangli Island's auction had become a very influential event for Jinling, targeting individual practitioners from the North Sea. Every time it was held, it brought Jinling and Lu Ping a lot of income. With the rise of Huangli Island's auction, Jinren Debao's fame also grew, especially after Lu Ping had advanced to become a Dharma adept. As the first follower of Lu Tianping Laozu, Debao's status in Jinling and the world of practitioners naturally grew. As the leader of Huangli Island's auction, Jinren Debao's treasures were innumerable to Jinling's practitioners below the core forging stage. There were even rumors that the treasures that Lu Tianping Laozu, who was known as the Treasure Boy, had no use for, were most likely in Jinren Debao's hands. There was once a disciple who was a practitioner of formations, because he had put forward a rather meaningful opinion on formations, which earned him the appreciation of Jinling's formation master, Lu Tianping Laozu's cultivation partner, Zhenren Silver Fox. Thus, he was taken to Huangli Island to choose a treasure from Zhenren Debao. In the end, he chose a piece of Millennium Lightning-struck wood. Although the 1,000 Years Thunderstruck wood was not as good as the 1,000 Years Thunderstruck peach wood, which could be used as a top-grade spiritual material for a formation master's natal array disc, it was still an extremely rare treasure for a formation master to cultivate their natal array disc. Countless Xinling sect formation cultivators were envious of it. Seeing the two people happily take away the silent disciples from the various sects, Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "Looks like we can't hide the news any longer. We can only try to buy as much time as possible." Lu Tianling Laozu also said, "That's the only way. However, I'm afraid that this method will be criticized by others in the future. After all, you're a dignified Dharma Laozu now, yet you're scheming against these insignificant minor repairs. It's not good for your reputation." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Teacher, you're worrying too much. Disciples' medicinal pellet isn't an ordinary bewilderment pellet. It's called the Dream Awakening pellet. Although it made them lose their consciousness, it's still very beneficial to their cultivation." Lu Tianling nodded. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly heard a muffled sound that sounded like an explosion coming from the bottom of the sea. The master and disciples' expressions became solemn, and they immediately cast all of their divine sense into the nearby sea. After a while, the two of them dived into the mist and charged in 2 different directions. On the surface of the sea 5 kilometers away from where the two of them had parted ways, the surging seawater seemed to be boiling as heat waves surged upwards. Just as Lu Ping arrived, he saw a blurry light in the depths of the sea suddenly become brighter and brighter, and the heat waves rising from the surface of the sea also became more and more oppressive. Lu Ping was startled. It seemed that his luck was pretty good. The light rising from the surface of the sea should be a spiritual fire of heaven and earth, and judging from its power, it should be at least an earth-rank spiritual fire. Just as Lu Ping's thoughts fell, the seawater within a radius of 10 meters from Lu Ping suddenly evaporated, forming a 3 feet deep bowl-like pit. A bright golden flame burned in the center of the pit. Earth-rank low-grade golden gilded flame. This kind of flame was abnormally violent, and it was not suitable for alchemy or forging. However, it was the favorite of some cultivators who pursued the explosive ability of the fire attribute. There were even some cultivators who practiced fire attribute cultivation methods who would rather give up their earth-rank middle-grade spiritual fire for this golden gilded flame. The 3 feet deep pit on the surface of the sea that was instantly evaporated was quickly filled up, and the seawater that crowded in from all directions took the opportunity to push the golden gilded flame into the air. Lu Ping took the opportunity to clench his hand, and a giant hand formed from seawater also clenched, grabbing the golden gilded flame that was thrown into the air. The golden gilded flame was abnormally intelligent, and it seemed to feel the danger. Instantly, the flame rose, and the endless heat roasted the giant hand until water vapor shot out in all directions, and the giant hand quickly shrank. However, Lu Ping only blew a breath of air, and the sea beneath his feet began to continuously replenish the seawater into the giant hand, maintaining the giant hand to trap the flame in the palm. With Lu Ping's strength, it was naturally very easy for him to subdue this earth-rank spiritual fire. However, this golden gilded flame's spirituality had exploded, and if the cultivator's strength was slightly lacking, they would rather explode and disperse their spirituality than be captured by others. Therefore, Lu Ping had no choice but to be overly cautious. The endless seawater continued to wear down the power of the flame until the power of the spiritual fire had completely dissipated, leaving only a fist-sized flame. Only then did Lu Ping take out a spirit sealing box and store the spiritual fire inside. As long as the spirituality of the spiritual fire was not lost, the lost power could be nourished and restored by the cultivator's true essence or spiritual qi. This was also a common method used by cultivators to safely subdue spiritual qi. Just as Lu Ping sealed the golden gilded flame in the spirit sealing box, Lu Tianling Laozu had already subdued a mystic low-grade spiritual fire that had escaped from the other side of the sea, and he hurried over to meet up with Lu Ping. Hearing that Lu Ping had actually subdued a golden gilded flame, even Lu Tianling Laozu, who was the head of Xinling's sect, who was used to seeing many rare treasures, had his eyes lit up. He said, "This spiritual fire can create a good seedling for practicing fire attribute cultivation methods." Lu Ping nodded. Then, he hesitated and asked, "Teacher, should I purify the poisonous fire mist on the surface of the sea? If our sect's cultivators were to come here, I'm afraid they would be poisoned by the poison with their cultivation bases. Don't restrain the fire poison mist for now." Lu Tianling and Laozu were hesitating, but Tianxiang Laozu had already appeared on the sea and said to the two of them. Tianxiang Laozu had obviously followed the two spiritual fires that had escaped from the bottom of the sea, and coincidentally heard the conversation between Lu Ping and his teacher. Tianxiang Laozu waved his hand, stopping the two of them from saluting, and said, "The situation down there seems to be more complicated than what we expected. The fire vein that we discovered was only an insignificant part of a huge underwater volcano chain, but when we were exploring it just now, it triggered the entire volcano chain. Now, the entire underwater volcano chain is on the verge of erupting, and it is rising rapidly. It is estimated that in 1 or 2 days at most, it will rush out of the sea. At that time, it may form a huge volcano chain, and this place will soon become a world of fire." Lu Tianling and Lu Ping were stunned by Tianxiang Laozu's words. Was the appearance of a huge volcano chain just because of an insignificant fire vein? Tianxiang Laozu seemed to have seen through their doubts, but he didn't explain too much. Instead, he said, "Come down with me to take a look at this fire vein. Right now, Tianjiang, Tianlu, and Tianqing are doing their best to prevent the fire vein from triggering the entire underwater volcano chain, but I don't think they can hold on for long. When the volcano erupts, it will definitely attract the cultivators of the North Sea, so our sect can only try to get as many benefits as possible before the volcano erupts." As the three of them dived down, Lu Tianling asked curiously, "It seems that several spiritual fires of heaven and earth escaped at the same time. Otherwise, with Martial Uncle's power, he shouldn't have let 2 spiritual fires escape from the sea." Speaking of gains, even Tianxiang Laozu was a little excited. He said, "Previously, when I heard that Xianwei found a fire vein and obtained a spiritual fire, I gathered a few people and rushed over. After that, I followed the fire vein and found 2 profound rank spiritual fires. I originally thought that this fire vein only had this much potential, but unexpectedly, it triggered the entire volcanic area. Not only did it cause the entire earth vein to become unstable, it also shook out the 4 spiritual fires hidden in the depths of the fire vein." Lu Ping and Lu Tianling followed behind Tianxiang Laozu all the way down to a depth of 2,000 feet. At this time, they could already see a fiery red area at the bottom of the sea. Presumably, that was where the fire vein was located. Tianxiang Laozu continued, "These 4 spiritual fires are 1 high-grade earth rank, 1 mid-grade earth rank, 1 low-grade earth rank, and one high-grade profound rank. The old man and the others originally wanted to guide this fire vein to Tianling Mountain, but unexpectedly, it triggered the volcanic area, so they could only stop it midway. Unexpectedly, the power of the volcanic area had clearly exceeded our expectations. Most of the energy of the old man and the others were tied up in suppressing the fire vein. In the end, the old man could only barely collect the high-grade and mid-grade earth-rank spiritual fires. Fortunately, the two of you arrived in time. Otherwise, I'm afraid that even the old man wouldn't be able to find these two spiritual fires. Hearing that, Lu Ping's heart stirred, and he said, Martial Granduncle, can you bestow that high-grade earth-rank spiritual fire to disciple? Tian Xiang Laozu laughed. It's a pity. That high-grade earth-rank spiritual fire is the Sea Heart spiritual fire. It's suitable for refining weapons, but it's quite lacking when it comes to concocting pills. Besides, don't you already have the Silver Capital spiritual fire? This flame is one of the most suitable spiritual fires in the cultivation world for concocting pills. Why would you still need an earth-rank spiritual fire? Lu Ping laughed. Disciple found a treasure that needs to be nurtured with spiritual fire, and this high-grade earth-rank spiritual fire is just right. Tian Xiang Laozu said, Fine. According to the old man's prediction, even if there are no more spiritual fires in the fire vein, there should still be quite a few in the volcano. At that time, if you can't find a suitable spiritual fire, this Sea Heart spiritual fire will be yours. Lu Ping was overjoyed in his heart. Thank you, Martial Granduncle. Nurturing the Samling 5 Elements leaf. No matter how many spiritual treasures there were, it would never be enough. As they spoke, the three of them had already reached the bottom of the sea, and they saw spiritual master Xin Wei wearing a treasure robe that was at least of the spirit-nurturing grade, ordering the 3 Dharma idol Laozu around. Martial Granduncle Tianjiang, please suppress the fire vein first. Martial Granduncle Tianjiang, please come here and bury the spirit stones. Pay attention to using the true essence in your body to temporarily protect it. Don't let the spirit stones be burned by the fire vein's high temperature. Martial Uncle Tiancheng, wrong, not there. Move 1 foot to the left, right there. The few Laozu did not say a word, following spiritual master Xin Wei's orders, going around the sea in circles without any pattern. Lu Tianling and Lu Ping looked at each other, speechless. Tian Xiang Laozu, who was at the side, smiled bitterly and said, The formation that this mind seeker set up really has no pattern at all. We Dharma adepts have hundreds of years of experience, and we have seen all kinds of formations and restrictions, but we have never seen such a clueless way of setting up a formation. Is this a formation system unique to the mind seeker? Lu Ping thought of the scene of spiritual master Xin Wei running around the sea and setting up the spirit-nurturing formation, and he agreed with him. But when did this guy get his hands on a spirit-nurturing treasure robe? Among the mid-core forging adepts of the sect, other than Lu Ping, this kind of treatment could be considered unique. Chapter 989. Not only that, among the third-generation disciples of Zhenling, even the current Lu Tianping wouldn't be able to order Laozu around. If this news were to spread out, it was unknown how many cultivators in Zhenling would have their eyeballs smashed to the ground. At this moment, enlightened Master Xin Wei suddenly exclaimed in joy, It's done! When everyone turned their heads, although the fire vein was still trembling, it was already restrained and its power was greatly reduced. Tianjiang and Tianlu Laozu heaved a long sigh of relief. Tiancheng Laozu, who was at the side, scolded enlightened Master Xin Wei, Brat, if this bullshit formation of yours doesn't work, be careful that I, your father, will teach you a lesson. Enlightened Master Xin Wei was slightly timid, but he immediately straightened his back and said, Don't worry, Martial Uncle. If I can't hold on for 2 days, I will jump into this underwater volcano myself. Tiancheng Laozu was stunned for a moment before he scolded, Damn it, didn't I say that you were as timid as a mouse? Why are you so arrogant now? Don't worry. With your identity as the only or seeker in our sect, I don't know how many Laozu will protect you. You are now the most popular person in our sect. Even if the old man wants to teach you a lesson, others might not agree. At this moment, Tian Chung Laozu and the other two landed on the ground. They looked at the fire vein that was still rumbling, but its power was countless times weaker than before. Tian Chung Laozu said, Tianling, you and Xinwei will guard this fire vein first to prevent others from destroying it. I, Tianjiang, Tianlu, Tianqing, and Tianping will go in and explore first. We will strive to reap as many benefits as we can before the various sects in the Northern Sea arrive. Also, this fire vein might be the only one that can be drawn away. Its value might even be higher than the fire vein in the Pill Pavilion. When the time comes, we must take this fire vein for ourselves. Tianjiang Laozu hurriedly said, That's right. This fire vein is even more violent than the fire vein in the Elixir Pavilion. It's not very suitable for alchemy. I think we should strengthen it to the refining hall. The greatest effect of the fire vein was that it could be used to strengthen the power of the spiritual fire. For example, in the process of Lu Ping's alchemy, he only needed to place the silver spirit flame on the ground, and the fire chi of the fire vein could continuously support the burning of the spirit flame. At this time, the alchemist only needed to control the temperature of the flame, and there was no or very little need to use true essence to fuel the flame. The fire vein in the Elixir Pavilion had always made Tianjiang Laozu envious. Although the refining hall also had a fire vein, the power of the fire vein was not good. Normally, the refiners could refine some magic tools, but if they wanted to refine magic weapons, the fire vein was almost useless. They could only rely on the refiner's own true essence to fuel the spiritual fire, which was a great consumption of the refiner's true essence and even energy. This was also an important reason why the progress of the refining hall had always been slower than that of the Elixir Pavilion. The most obvious reason was that the Elixir Pavilion had produced many alchemy grandmasters and masters in the past few years, but the refining hall was struggling. Tianjiang Laozu's lifespan was now approaching its end. For the inheritance of the refining hall, he simply threw away his pride and fought with Tianlu Laozu. Unexpectedly, Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, Fine, this fire vein will be given to the refining hall. In this way, it made Tianjiang Laozu feel a little embarrassed. The five of them followed the direction of the fire vein according to the judgment of spiritual master Xinwei to find the hidden volcanoes at the bottom of the sea. After a while, they walked for dozens of miles and arrived at an undersea mountain range. The few Laozu had their own means. Lu Ping's 3 pure true pupils could already see that some of the undersea mountains were covered with traces of the strange magma that was cooled by the seawater just after it was used on the sea surface. At this moment, there was another rumbling sound. Not far away, an undersea volcano suddenly erupted. A large amount of hot water rose up, and the scarlet fire poison even dyed the surrounding seawater red. The few of them quickly surrounded the erupting volcano. If there was spiritual fire erupting along with the magma, it was best to block the direction of escape. Just as Lu Ping took a detour from the side, he heard a signal from Tianjiang Laozu in front of him. It seemed that he had already captured a spiritual fire. Lu Ping stood guard in front of the undersea volcano and watched as a large amount of magma raged in the seawater. In the end, it was cooled and extinguished by the endless seawater. However, there was still not a single spiritual fire that flew in his direction. In his boredom, Lu Ping realized that although the scarlet fire poison that blended into the seawater was not very toxic, it was very difficult to deal with. It was also very easy for it to enter a cultivator's blood vessels and entangle with their inner yuan. After a long time, it would slowly dissolve the inner yuan in a cultivator's body, causing their cultivation to be unable to advance. Of course, this kind of fire poison still had a serious impact on cultivators below the blood condensation stage. Even core forging cultivators who stayed in such an environment for a long time would not be able to avoid the infiltration of these flames. Although Dharma adepts were not afraid of this fire poison, it was still very tiring to constantly use their inner yuan to expel these poisons. Naturally, Lu Ping was not afraid of this kind of poison. The 10,000 poison liquid was known as the mother of all poisons in the world. The 10,000 poison meteorite energy shield that was formed from it could be said to be immune to all poisons. Moreover, after the fire poison was dissolved by the 10,000 poison meteorite energy shield, It could also strengthen the power of Lu Ping's Vigor Shield. However, if ordinary cultivators wanted to explore the volcanic region, they would need to prepare a large number of antidote pills. But if the antidote pills were not effective, it was possible for cultivators to be infected with the poison without knowing it. Lu Ping opened the space door of the House of Gold at the bottom of the sea and let the scarlet fire poison breath into the green stone pool of the 10,000 poison liquid at the top of Little Lonely Mountain. Inside, more than 2 portions of the 10,000 Wonder Dew that Du Jialua, Wang Qi, and the others brought back from the 7-star grotto heaven immediately began to roll at the bottom of the 10,000 poison liquid. The scarlet poison fog that permeated the seawater within a radius of 3 miles immediately gathered towards the space door of the House of Gold. Then, it was directly drawn by the 10,000 poison liquid to the top of the green stone pool and condensed into a 3-foot-wide black-red poison fog. In the end, the black-red poison fog condensed into a liquid and began to drip down like rain. The rain melted into the golden liquid of the 10,000 poison liquid, but it did not affect the color of the 10,000 poison liquid at all. After the black-red poison fog turned into raindrops and fell down, the 10,000 poison liquid seemed to have eaten its fill and no longer drew the poison fog. Instead, it began to quietly digest and produce new 10,000 Wonder Dew at the bottom of the green stone pool. Without the call of the 10,000 poison liquid, the scarlet poison fog from further away once again spread towards Lu Ping. However, the density of the poison fog this time was much fainter. It seemed that this method still wouldn't work. Not everyone could refine and use the myriad poison liquid in a short period of time. Moreover, most of the Zhenling sect disciples who came to the Northwest Sea this time cultivated fire-attributed cultivation techniques, and the myriad poison liquid was, after all, a miraculous item with water attribute. Lu Ping thought for a moment and summoned the Black Prison Poison Fire from his storage magic tool. This Black Prison Poison Fire had grown twice in succession in the Fallen Mountain Secret Land and the Golden Fallen Canyon of the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. In particular, after it was brought to the Golden Fallen Canyon by Du Jialua to absorb a large amount of poison that had accumulated for tens of thousands of years, it had grown to a completely new state. It even caused the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash to want to devour this strange fire several times, but it was rejected by Lu Ping every time. As soon as the Black Prison Poison Fire appeared, the scarlet fire poison that permeated the sea within a radius of several dozen feet was once again swept away by the swaying flame. However, if this was the only use of the Black Prison Poison Fire, there was no need for Lu Ping to summon it. Lu Ping shook the black flame, and dozens of sparks burst out from the flame. Then, each spark turned into a little black flame and circled around the poison fire. With a thought from Lu Ping, these dozens of small flames began to burst out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they went deep into the distant Scarlet Sea. Then, Lu Ping saw that the distant sea quickly formed dozens of areas that had been purified of the fire poison. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He thought to himself that this method could be used. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Lu Ping's divine sense sensed that the dozens of flames were suddenly extinguished. Lu Ping was stunned. Only then did he remember that he was at the bottom of the sea. The dozens of flames were protected by Lu Ping's primary essence. Naturally, they could exist in the seawater. However, as the seawater continued to erode the flames, the primary essence supporting the flames would be exhausted. Even if the flames' characteristics were different from ordinary flames, they could not stop the endless erosion of the seawater. However, this was not a problem. When the time came, the cultivator who brought the separated flames from the Black Prison Poison Fire with him could use his own primary essence to nurture the flames. The flames would not be eroded by the seawater and extinguished. The cultivator could also borrow the flame's ability to absorb the fire poison to prevent the fire poison from seeping into his body. Not only would the separated flames help the cultivator resist the fire poison, the flames would also absorb the fire poison to strengthen themselves. In the end, the flames would return to the Black Prison Poison Fire, and the power of the flames would be greatly enhanced. Additionally, there was no need for Lu Ping to travel all over the world to collect the scarlet fire poison. After a long while, the volcano slowly quieted down under the cover of the sea water. There was no trace of the spiritual fire in the direction where Lu Ping was guarding. Celestial phenomenon Laozu had already sent out the signal to gather. Lu Ping directly split the seawater and headed in the direction of the signal. Geocentric flame. Lu Ping was slightly stunned when he saw the flame in celestial phenomenon Laozu's hand. He had once obtained a mid-grade mystic rank geocentric flame in the secret chamber of the refining hall of Failing Mountain. At the same time, he also found the spiritual fire smelting purification technique and a high-grade refining furnace. At that time, this geocentric flame was brought back to the refining hall by Taoist Xianling. There was also a scarlet flame in celestial phenomenon Laozu's hand. It was a rather rare water spiritual flame. However, it was just a strange object and not a spiritual object. Apart from the characteristic of being able to burn in water, its other functions were not any special compared to other flames. Tianlu and celestial phenomenon Laozu also did not see the appearance of the spiritual fire like Lu Ping. When Lu Ping saw the water's spiritual flame, the seven treasures thunder calabash in the core space suddenly shook. Lu Ping opened his mouth and asked celestial phenomenon Laozu with a smile, "Martial Granduncle, can you give this flame to me? It seems to be useful to the seven treasures thunder calabash." Chapter 990. Celestial phenomenon Laozu was well aware of the fact that Lu Ping had the seven thunder treasures calabash. Naturally, he also understood the effects of these rare natural treasures on the seven thunder treasures calabash. Although the water spirit fire was relatively rare, it was not a fire seed with any special effects. Naturally, celestial phenomenon Laozu would not be interested in it. Celestial phenomenon Laozu only smiled lightly and passed the fire seed to Lu Ping, while Lu Ping fed the water spirit fire to the seven thunder treasures calabash. After that, the five of them worked together and discovered another 7 volcanoes in this area that had erupted because of the fire. They found 2 profound-level flames and 1 earth-level flame, as well as 2 special flames. Lu Ping's luck was not bad. When he found the 3rd volcano that was about to erupt, a profound-level flame flew in his direction and was easily intercepted by Lu Ping. Half a day had passed, and the 5 Dharma adepts had gathered together. Celestial phenomenon Laozu said, "The size of this underwater mountain range has exceeded our expectations. If it is really as Xinwei predicted, the entire mountain range will rise out of the sea due to the eruption of the underwater volcanoes. This is a volcanic mountain range the size of a large island. Now that the frequency of eruptions is increasing, if the few of us continue to act alone, I'm afraid we will not be able to take care of all of them. Why don't we split up and communicate with each other every 2 hours? If there is any danger, we will immediately retreat to the fire vein that Tianling is guarding. What do you all think?" Lu Ping had this idea long ago. Seeing Tianjiang Laozu nod, he also agreed. Tianlu and Tianqing Laozu also had no objections. The 5 of them split up and headed in a different direction. However, celestial phenomenon Laozu still seemed to be a little worried about Tianlu and Tianjiang, so he ordered the 2 of them to join forces and head in a different direction. At this time, the underwater mountain range was already becoming more and more unstable. This was because celestial phenomenon Laozu and the others had previously tried to use the formation to guide the fire vein to Tianling Mountain. Unexpectedly, this fire vein was connected to the entire underwater mountain range. Halfway through the activation of the formation, this caused the underwater mountain range to shake, causing the silent underwater mountain range to erupt. They had no choice but to stop the guidance of the fire vein and try their best to suppress and seal this fire vein. However, the final eruption of the underwater volcano was already a foregone conclusion. Sage Xuanwei's method was only able to give the volcano a buffer of 2 days. As time passed, the complete eruption of the volcano became more and more obvious. The frequency of the eruption of the individual volcanoes was also increasing. Lu Ping summoned Lu Qiner from the House of Gold. Lu Qiner originally did not like the deep sea, but the aura of the volcanic eruption that filled the air still made Lu Qiner feel refreshed. The Fire Phoenix clan was originally a spirit of the flames. Back then, Wan Laozu led the development of the southern Yin province in the world of cultivation, using the endless volcanoes as a place to stay. The Fire Phoenix clan was the direct descendant of Luan Laozu. The reason why they settled down in the Eastern Sea was because they found a huge volcano that rose from the bottom of the sea. With that as their base, after several tens of thousands of years of development, they had become a demon clan that was second only to the green sea snakes among the top 3 demon clans in the Eastern Sea. Although Lu Qin'er was the descendant of the Wind Phoenix and Fire Phoenix, the Wind Phoenix's position in the Phoenix clan was far inferior to the Fire Phoenix clan. Most of Lu Qin'er's abilities were also based on the divine abilities of the Fire Phoenix clan. Therefore, she had a bloodline affinity towards flames, especially the aura of volcanoes. Lu Ping took out the water moon repelling pearl and let it hover over his head, then said, "You and I will work together and try our best to find those volcanoes that are about to erupt. Let's see if we can find any spirit flames or special flames among them." However, right after Lu Ping finished his words, Lu Qin'er pointed at a faintly discernible underwater mountain a few miles behind Lu Ping and said, "Big brother, that mountain is about to erupt." Lu Ping was startled and asked, "How do you know?" Lu Qin'er proudly said, "Big brother, you've forgotten my origin. The Fire Phoenix race is naturally sensitive to the aura of volcanoes. This mountain gives qin, or the feeling that it's about to erupt. And looking at how tall this mountain is, I'm afraid it's a huge volcano that's about to erupt." Lu Ping scratched the back of his head in annoyance and said, "If I had known this would happen, I would have called you out earlier." As soon as Lu Ping's voice faded, the mountain under their feet began to shake again, and this time, it was even more violent than what Lu Ping had felt before. Lu Qin'er cried out in alarm, "Hee, it's about to erupt. This is a sign that this volcano is about to erupt." Lu Ping and Lu Qin'er hurriedly flanked the volcano from 2 different directions. When they were still a mile away from the volcano, the entire volcano began to shake on the seabed. Silt rustled down from the top of the volcano, and things constantly squirmed out from the top of the volcano. The mountain also began to slowly increase in height. At this time, Lu Ping finally realized how accurate Lu Qin'er's judgment was. Then, with a sudden explosion, a huge wave of fire exploded in all directions, causing the surrounding seawater to instantly boil. White bubbles surged out of the muddy gray matter in large amounts towards the surface of the sea. The dark red magma spurted thousands of feet high in the seawater, then slowly descended to the bottom of the sea under the obstruction of the seawater and the temperature drop, bringing with it patches of crimson fire poison into the seawater. Streams of magma began to overflow from the mouth of the volcano, flowing towards the bottom of the mountain and heating up the surrounding seawater. At this time, 2 sparks suddenly separated from the gushing magma and flew in 2 different directions, causing a series of boiling bubbles in the seawater. Lu Ping's eyes lit up, and he immediately turned into a stream of water and chased after one of the sparks. On the other side, Lu Qin'er clearly also noticed the 2 unusual sparks and chased after the other one. However, as the 2 of them chased after the 2 sparks, another spark suddenly jumped out of the magma overflowing from the volcano's mouth and rose straight towards the surface of the sea. Lu Ping held the Linglong wine cauldron in his hand and pulled it towards the flying flame. The flame suddenly froze in midair and then shot back towards the Linglong wine cauldron in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping stepped forward and collected the flame into the wine cauldron. He was immediately overjoyed. It was actually a low-grade earth-step spirit fire, a 4-inch spirit fire. This was a strange flame used in the cultivation world for alchemy. However, at this time, Lu Ping did not have the time to appreciate this legendary spirit fire of heaven and earth. With Lu Ping's spiritual sense, even though it was greatly weakened by the seawater at the bottom of the sea, the flame that was escaping while Lu Ping and Lu Qin'er were still unable to escape Lu Ping's perception. Lu Ping turned around and pointed at the flame that was escaping towards the sea. A silver light shot out from his fingertip and instantly struck the escaping flame. The flame was immediately frozen in the seawater and could not move. Lu Ping's hands tore, and he directly displayed his spatial magic in the seawater. When he reappeared, he was in front of the flame that was frozen in place by the silver light. At this time, the flame suddenly expanded and broke through the restraints of the silver light. Just as it was about to escape again, Lu Ping would not give it the chance. He scooped the flame with both hands, and the high-grade earth-step spirit fire was collected by Lu Ping. A trace of hesitation flashed across Lu Ping's face. Then, he arranged the other 4 high-grade earth-step spirit fire and the other high-grade earth-step spirit fire round the Samling 5 Elements leaf. He wanted to see if the legendary Samling 5 Elements leaf, which was known as the most useless item in the cultivation world, was really only used to heal a cultivator's damaged essence. At this time, Lu Qin'er, who had already subdued the other mid-grade mystic-class spirit fire, rushed over with the waterproof pearl on her head. She had an excited expression on her face as she said, "Brother, this is clearly a never-before-seen volcano chain. Only the first eruption would produce so many spirit fires. This volcano is the tallest in the surrounding volcanic mountain range, so it must have produced the most spirit fires. Qin suspects that there might even be a heaven-level spirit fire in this volcano." Lu Ping's eyes lit up when he heard this and said, "Really?" Lu Qin'er nodded and said, "Most likely." According to Qin'er's inherited memories, the more violent the eruption, the more likely it is to produce a high-grade spirit fire. Now that this volcano has erupted, not only did it not decrease in height, it even caused the earth to rise higher and higher. This also means that there might be an even higher-grade spirit fire in this volcano. Since a high-grade earth-step spirit fire appeared before, if there's another spirit fire in this volcano, then it must be a heaven-level spirit fire. Lu Ping had originally thought that the appearance of a strange spirit fire like the 4-inch spirit fire in this volcano was enough to make him happy. He had never thought that he might encounter a heaven-level spirit fire. This was truly an unexpected surprise. Because of the rarity and wide range of uses of spirit fire in the cultivation world, the supply and demand of heaven and earth spirit fire was always in a state of imbalance compared to other spirit fire. Therefore, the cultivation world used other methods to improve the quality of the spirit fire. Although this could achieve the goal, it often caused the spirit fire's spirituality to be impure due to the influence of external forces. This would cause other problems, such as the influence on the cultivator's strength after advancing, and so on. However, because the cultivators who practiced fire attribute cultivation methods had extremely strong destructive power, and the influence of external forces to improve the quality of the spirit fire was usually minimal. Even if there was a weakening effect, it was usually not visible. Therefore, many fire attribute cultivators who wanted to break through to the transcendence stage would condense a 7th-grade golden core and above when they advanced to the peak of the core forging stage. However, they could not find a heaven-level spirit fire, so they could only use this method to advance. According to what Lu Ping knew, Tianjiang, Tianlu, and Tianqing Laozu had more or less used this method. However, Tianjiang and Tianlu Laozu's cultivation base was insufficient. Even if they used this method, they could only condense a golden core between the 6th grade and 7th grade. After that, they used a secret technique to advance by luck. As for Tianqing Laozu, he had no choice but to use this method in order to condense 2 heaven-level spirit fires. Therefore, Tianjiang and Tianlu Laozu's cultivation base could not be compared to Tianqing Laozu's. Lu Ping looked at the volcano that had risen nearly 100 feet in a short period of time. He composed himself and asked, "Then how do I draw out the spirit fire inside?" Chapter 991. The 4-inch spirit flame was an extremely unique spirit flame. It was very similar to Lyra Laozu's natal spirit flame, the 7-colored flame. They were both spirit flames that could enhance their own quality by devouring or refining other flames. It was also one of the rarest types of spirit flames in the cultivation world that could grow. However, it was different from the 7-colored flame. The 4-inch spirit flame was just another name for the spirit flame when it grew to a certain stage. When it grew again, its name would change. It would be called 5-inch, 6-inch, until the 9-inch spirit flame became a high-grade heaven-rank spirit flame. The reason why this type of spirit flame was so unique was because of its performance when it was used to refine pills. Other spirit flames might be limited by their grade and could only be used to refine pills of the highest grade. Pills below that grade could be refined with this type of spirit flame. Just like a growing spiritual fire like the 7-colored flame, As its quality increased, the grade of the medicinal pills it could refine would also increase. The types of medicinal pills it could refine would also become richer and richer, and its power would also become stronger and stronger. However, this type of spirit flame was completely different. When it was born, it was the lowest of the low-grade mystic class flames. The flame was at most 1 inch long, so it was called the 1-inch spirit flame. The pills it could refine were also limited to pills that could be consumed by early blood condensation cultivators. If one wanted to use this type of flame to refine pills for blood-refining cultivators, it would be a disaster. After it advanced to the mid-grade mystic class through various methods, the flame would grow to become a 2-inch spirit flame. Then, it could refine pills for mid-blood condensation cultivators. At this point, the strangeness of this type of spirit flame was revealed. Any pill that was consumed by an early blood condensation cultivator would also explode when it was refined with it. Similarly, if one used the 2-inch spirit flame to refine a late blood condensation cultivator's pill, it would be even worse. It wouldn't even be able to fuse the initial medicinal properties of the spirit herbs, let alone form a pill. The spirit flame in Lu Ping's hand was only 4 inches long, which was a low-grade earth-rank spirit flame. It could only be used to refine pills for early core forging cultivators. It couldn't be used to refine other spirit pills. But it was undeniable that no matter which stage this kind of spirit flame grew to, its effect could be said to be unparalleled when used to refine pills of this rank. Even if Lu Ping's silver spirit flame was known as one of the 3 most suitable spirit flames in the world of practitioners for refining elixirs, if it were to encounter an 8-inch flame that was a mid-grade heaven-level 8-inch flame that was controlled by the same alchemist as the silver spirit flame and used to refine elixirs suitable for mid-dharma adepts, the silver spirit flame could be described as utterly defeated. However, it was precisely because this spirit flame could not refine all spirit pills that were above and below its grade that this flame naturally could not obtain the title of the most suitable spirit fire in the cultivation world like the silver spirit flame. Ever since Lu Ping had obtained this 4-inch spirit flame, he had been thinking about how to use this spirit fire that rarely appeared in the cultivation world. Even when he obtained a high-grade earth-rank spirit fire, he was still rather careless about it. It was only when Lu Qiner mentioned that there might be a high-grade heaven-level spirit fire hidden in this volcano that Lu Ping was jolted out of his deep thoughts. Hearing Lu Ping ask about how to lure the spirit fire out of the volcano, Lu Qiner made a helpless expression and said, "Spirit fires of heaven and earth are naturally very spiritual. Otherwise, they wouldn't have wanted to fly away the moment they were born. Now that the spirit fire is hidden in the volcano, it would be extremely difficult to lure it out. The only way is to go deep into the volcano to capture it." When Lu Ping heard this, his previous enthusiasm was immediately extinguished. Looking at the dark red lava that was still spewing out in front of him, if he entered the volcano to search for the spirit fire, he was afraid that before he could even find the aura of the flame, Lu Ping's inner yuan would be depleted by the endless flow of lava and turned into nothingness. Lu Qiner paused and said, "Actually, you can use a cauldron." Hearing this, Lu Ping's eyes suddenly lit up. He then heard Lu Qiner continue to say, "Actually, the cauldron itself can be used as the best magic treasure to defend against fire attribute attacks. However, because the cultivation world's inheritance of refining cauldrons is incomplete, it is usually extremely difficult to condense 3 treasured restrictions on the cauldron. But even so, it is extremely difficult for late-stage core forging cultivators who practice fire attribute cultivation methods to deal with ordinary magic treasure cauldrons. I heard that in some of the large sects with long inheritances, there are even spirit-nurturing level cauldrons that have appeared in the 6 large sections. However, no one knows if it is true or false. But if there really is a spirit-nurturing level cauldron, or even a higher level of magic treasure cauldron, then for cultivators who practice fire attribute cultivation methods, it is simply a nightmare." Lu Qiner's words caused Lu Ping's originally silent thoughts to come alive again. The Nachuan cauldron that had shrunk to the size of a palm had already appeared in Lu Ping's right hand. However, immediately Lu Ping looked at the Linglong wine cauldron in his left hand with some hesitation. Although the Linglong wine cauldron was not a cauldron, it was still a spiritual treasure. Perhaps it could withstand the scorching of volcanic magma compared to the Nachuan cauldron. When Linglong saw Lu Ping's gaze, she immediately shook her head and hit the wine cauldron, making a clanking sound. At the same time, she shouted, "No, no, I am a wine cauldron, not a cauldron. Don't throw me into the volcano." Lu Ping thought about it and agreed. Strictly speaking, Linglong was only an auxiliary spiritual treasure. It couldn't even be considered a defensive spiritual treasure. Being scorched by the flaming magma was really not her strong point. At this time, Lu Qiner also said, "Brother is not in a hurry to enter the volcano. Currently, the volcano is still at its peak. Wait until the volcano calms down before you enter." Lu Ping said, "Oh." He looked at the volcano that was rising all the way and the mountain range at the bottom of the sea. He didn't know if the volcano would rush out of the sea after it calmed down. At this time, a few communication jade scrolls flew over from all directions. Only then did Lu Ping remember that it was time to once again maintain contact with each other. After receiving all 4 jade scrolls, Tian Xiang Laozu found an erupting volcano. However, he only managed to obtain a mysterious fire seed. On the other hand, the 2 Laozu of Tianlu and Tianjiang worked together and found 2 volcanoes in a row. Together, they managed to capture 2 spiritual fires and a mysterious fire seed. One of the spiritual fires was also a mid-grade earth level. Tian Xiang Laozu also obtained a high-grade Xin level spiritual fire. It seemed that the ability to find spiritual fires really had nothing to do with the level of one's level of cultivation. As a late Dharma adept, after 2 hours, his harvest was the lowest among all of them. Who knew what Tian Xiang Laozu would think when he found out about the results? Lu Ping smiled slightly. He engraved his harvest into a jade scroll and sent it to the other Laozu. 3 spiritual fires in one go, 1 high-grade Xin level, 1 low-grade earth level, and 1 high-grade earth level. This should be enough to make these few Laozu envious. As expected, after a while, a jade scroll flew over. Lu Ping smiled and received it. If he didn't see wrongly, this should be a jade scroll from Uncle Tian Xiang. He didn't know how Tian Xiang Laozu would react when he found out about his harvest. Lu Ping was really looking forward to it. Lu Ping's divine sense seeped into the jade scroll, and a hidden wave of anger surged towards him. His expression instantly changed. There was only one sentence in the jade scroll. "Zhang Shi ambushed you. Your heavenly spiritual energy is injured. Return immediately." Zhang Shi, courting death. Lu Ping's aura surged, pushing the seawater around him 3 feet away. Lu Qiner, who was at the side, was so frightened that she hugged the water moon pearl tightly and retreated tens of feet away. Lu Ping's divine will extended to a distance of 30 miles. His body leaned forward, and his whole body had already stepped into the space door. When he reappeared, he was already 30 miles away. Then, Lu Ping repeated what he had done, using several spatial techniques in a row. In the blink of an eye, he had already crossed the distance of 100 miles. If it had been an ordinary early Dharma adept, it would have been impossible for them to continuously cast their space techniques and perform extreme teleportation. What's more, even a mid-Dharma adept would not be able to teleport a distance of 15 kilometers in one go when casting extreme teleportation. If Tian Xiang Laozu was here, he would definitely be shocked. At this time, Lu Ping's speed could almost catch up to him, who was a grand adept. At this time, Lu Ping had gradually calmed down. He began to think about why Zhang Shi would appear here, and how he could so accurately find the place where his teacher was guarding. Hundreds of miles away, Lu Tianling, who was seriously injured, struggled to cooperate with Mei Tianqin, who had rushed back from the Central Plains to resist Zhang Shi's attack. However, at this time, Zhang Shi had already seen that the seal of the fire vein under Lu Tianling's feet was the key to her attack. 70% of his attacks were directed at the seal, causing Lu Tianling and Mei Tianqin to be extremely embarrassed. Once the seal was destroyed, the fire vein would become active again, and the entire underwater volcano chain that was connected to the vein would enter the volcanic eruption period. Not to mention the fact that Tianxiang and the others who were exploring the volcano chain at this time would not be able to escape safely if the volcano chain erupted as a whole. Who knew how many spirit fires that appeared when the volcano chain erupted in time would be lost? Zhang Shi knew that he did not have much time, because just when Mei Tianqin arrived in time to save Lu Tianling, he had already seen Lu Tianling's jade slip asking for help. He wanted to stop her, but it was too late. This made Zhang Shi very regretful. Thinking about it, there must be other Dharma adepts of Jinling nearby. Once they arrived, his sneak attack this time would be in vain. At this time, the Songhai sect was already being suppressed by Jinling and Xianling sect. His sneak attack had failed, and he was afraid that it would bring more trouble to the Songhai sect. Zhang Shi was worried. How could his sneak attack not kill Lu Tianling? When did Lu Tianling's strength become so strong? Her cultivation had obviously reached the peak of the early Dharma stage, and she was only one step away from guiding the thunder to the mid-Dharma stage. Zhang Shi, you're looking for death. Lu Ping did not go too far, so he was the closest to Lu Tianling. He actually rushed back before Tian Xiang Laozu, and his angry roar scared Zhang Shi to death. Chapter 992. What did it mean to be evil? The moment Zhang Shi attacked the leader of Zhenling, Lu Tianling, Laozu, Zhang Shi's mood could fully explain his actions. Zhang Shi was also a quick-witted person. After the Blue Sea sect suffered a great loss at Frost Island, Zhang Shi instinctively suspected that the matters in the Northwest Sea realm were not as simple as he had imagined. Therefore, after the matter at Frost Island, Zhang Shi left the Blue Sea sect and wanted to investigate the Northwest Sea realm. Sure enough, not long after Zhang Shi arrived in the Northwest Sea, he quickly sensed the earthquake coming from the southwest of the Northwest Sea. That was the sea where the Blue Sea sect had schemed against Zhenling's secret mineral vein and was captured alive by Lu Ping. At this time, if Zhang Shi still could not guess that Zhenling really had a plan here, then he would not be Zhang Shi. Although Zhang Shi had received a blow from Lu Ping after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage and was seriously injured by Lu Ping, who was only at the early Dharma stage, this was not to say that Zhang Shi's ability was weak. It was because Lu Ping's ability was too amazing. On the contrary, the fact that Zhang Shi was able to achieve supreme power after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage meant that Zhang Shi's ability was really close to Jiang Tianlin's. Therefore, after Zhang Shi searched the nearby sea for more than half a day, he finally found traces of Lu Tianling at the bottom of the sea. However, Lu Tianling was limited by his own level of cultivation and did not notice Zhang Shi quietly approaching. Zhang Shi hid in the distance and looked in the direction of Lu Tianling. The constantly turbulent fire vein and the messy formation around the fire vein immediately let Zhang Shi know that this time, he had probably really found some secret of Zhenling. Although the fire vein was extremely far away, Zhang Shi could still tell that it was an extremely high-quality fire vein. Otherwise, Lu Tianling wouldn't have to personally guard it. There was no doubt that this fire vein was attractive to Zhang Shi, but this way, he would have to face Lu Tianling personally. This was a sect master, and although his strength was not as strong as him, his status was far above him. If he really tried to snatch it, then Jinling would definitely take it as a declaration of war, and the situation of the Azure Sea sect, which was already in a passive position, would definitely become even worse. Zhang Shi weighed the pros and cons again and again. In the end, he decided to retreat. At this moment, the situation of the Azure Sea sect did not allow him to do anything that could not be measured. Even so, after he left here, as long as he released the news that Jinling was here, he believed that many sects in the North Sea would be interested. The so-called sharing of benefits was first proposed by Jinling himself. Now, he would give them a taste of their own medicine and discuss them. However, just as Zhang Shi decided to retreat, the giant volcano that Lu Ping was guarding under the guidance of Lu Qin'er happened to erupt at this time. The strong earthquake once again affected the fire vein under Lu Tianling's feet, causing the originally sealed fire vein to shake again. Lu Tianling had no choice but to split his attention to suppress it. Zhang Shi's eyes flashed with a cold light. At this time, he suddenly realized that Lu Tianling had bound the fire vein under his feet but did not pull it. It must have something to do with the previous earthquake, and Lu Tianling had to suppress the fire vein. So naturally, he did not have the energy to check the situation of the earthquake just now. This meant that there must be other Dharma adepts of Zhenling there to investigate. or else he would not let the dignified leader Jinling guard a fire vein. So what on earth affected this fire vein? Not only did Jinling not pull the fire vein, but Lu Tianling's expression seemed very serious, as if there was a great danger hidden within. At this time, the eruption of the giant volcano that Lu Ping was guarding had reached its peak. With the eruption of magma, the entire earth vein was lifted, causing the earthquake to become even more intense. The fire vein under Lu Tianling's feet was also getting more and more violent, and the impact on the suppression formation that spiritual master Xianwei had set up was also getting more and more intense. Lu Tianling still spared no effort to suppress the fire vein under her feet, and finally, the cold light in Zhang Xi's eyes became more and more intense. What on earth was on the other side of the fire vein? And Lu Tianling seemed to be very afraid of the fire vein under her feet, as if she was afraid of something. What on earth was she afraid of? The cautious Zhang Xi guessed that he seemed to be getting closer and closer to Jinling's plan, but he still decided to go along the general direction of the fire vein to take a look. At this time, the earthquake kept coming, which also pointed Zhang Xi in the right direction. Underwater volcanoes. It was actually underwater volcanoes. Yes, in the world of practice, volcanoes that had just erupted often had spiritual fires of heaven and earth, and this seemingly endless underwater volcano group had many volcanoes. If spiritual master Jinling was allowed to search for volcanoes that were about to erupt one by one, how many spiritual fires of heaven and earth would fall into Jinling's hands? No, I can't let this huge resource be monopolized by Jinling, and I can't even let Jinling enjoy this information for too long. That would also allow Jinling to reap the benefits of this volcano group in advance. Zhang Xi turned around and was about to leave, but at this moment, several jade slips fell into Lu Tianling's hands. These were the messages sent by the few Dharma adepts who entered the volcano group to report their safety to each other. Zhang Xi's heart skipped a beat. It turned out that there were at least 5 people in this volcano group. At this time, in order for Jinling to keep the secret and at the same time ensure that he could get as close to the erupting volcanoes as possible, only Dharma adepts could enter. If I suddenly attack Lu Tianling and seriously injure or kill him, then break the seal of the fire vein. Once the entire underwater volcano group erupts, how many of the 5 Jinling Dharma adepts would be able to survive? This thought emerged in Zhang Xi's fiery heart, and he could no longer suppress this thought in his heart. Previously, he was afraid of Lu Tianling's identity as the head of the sect. If he suddenly attacked and killed him, even if he was seriously injured and then chased after him, who in the world of practice would know that it was him? Even if he couldn't kill Lu Tianling, as long as he reopened the seal of the fire vein. Once the volcano group erupted, 2 or 3 of the 5 Dharma adepts would die. Even if the remaining ones survived, they would probably be seriously injured. At that time, Jinling would be greatly injured. And why would the Songhai sect be afraid of an injured tiger? As for the possibility that Lu Tianling was not killed by him, and the seal of the fire vein could not be broken, Zhang Xi did not even think about it. What a joke. With Zhang Xi's strength, in the entire North Sea, other than the monster Lu Tianping, among the adepts of the same level, only Zhang Tianlin could be considered a match for him. Lu Tianling was just an early Dharma adept. How could he be a match for him? No matter how cautious Zhang Xi was, in the end, he could not resist the temptation of the possibility of killing a few Dharma adepts of Jinling. The blood-orange sword made a sneak attack, and sure enough, it succeeded and seriously injured Lu Tianling. However, the development of the situation was still unexpected. Zhang Xi naturally expected that Lu Tianling had a spirit treasure that was passed down by Jinling as the head of the sect, but he did not expect that Lu Tianling's level of practice had already reached the peak of the early Dharma stage. However, what surprised Zhang Xi even more than Lu Tianling's level of practice was his strength. Lu Tianling, who was suddenly attacked, suddenly turned around and threw a lightning whip. The flashing lightning followed the trail of the whip and rippled in the sea, forming a huge ball of lightning that suddenly exploded towards Zhang Xi. Divine thunder. It was the divine thunder again. And this kind of power was obviously a natural great spell. He did not expect that Lu Tianling had actually formed a natural great spell. This was not the most important thing. What really made Zhang Xi afraid was the lightning whip in Lu Tianling's hand. It was different from the blood-orange sword that Zhang Shi had obtained from the Blood Shura's companion's spirit treasure, which had been modified into a spirit treasure. The lightning whip in Lu Tianling's hand was a genuine spirit treasure, and its quality was far above the blood-orange sword. When Lu Tianling's Kuei water divine ability was unleashed through the lightning whip, the power it displayed was no longer as simple as adding the two together. Zhang Shi screamed and quickly retreated. Even though he was in the mid-Dharma stage, he was sure that this move could not be resisted. However, in this moment, Lu Tianling had already regained his senses. He looked at Zhang Shi as if he was looking at a dead man. "Zhang Shi, how dare you?" However, at this time, Zhang Shi was already like an arrow on a bow. This matter had already been done, and there was no time for Zhang Shi to regret it. The blood-orange sword moved horizontally, and this time, it was no longer aimed at Lu Tianling. Instead, it was aimed at the seal under Lu Tianling's feet. "You dare!" Lu Tianling panicked and quickly used the lightning whip to block with all his strength. However, his cultivation was not as strong as Zhang Shi's. Although he was lucky enough to block this attack, he had already been pushed back tens of feet. Lu Tianling threw out a jade slip towards the direction of the volcanoes. He quickly moved forward with the intention of blocking Zhang Shi's attack again, but it was already too late. Zhang Shi's blood-orange sword was already stabbing towards the spiritual energy rope that was revealed by the seal. Seeing that the seal was about to be destroyed by Zhang Shi, Lu Tianling even felt a little desperate. However, unexpectedly, a pum sound was heard. The spiritual energy rope was cut, but the fire vein was still not released. Wah! Spiritual Master Xianwei appeared in another corner of the seal. His entire face had turned purple gold, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. However, his hand was still holding onto another spiritual energy rope as he smiled proudly at Zhang Shi. Zhang Shi's sword attack was actually blocked by a mid-core forging stage cultivator. This was enough to make Zhang Shi angry. "You're courting death." At this time, Zhang Shi could see that the entire seal was very strange. It probably came from the mid-core forging stage cultivator in front of him. As long as he killed this person, the entire fire vein would definitely explode. However, at this time, a delicate shout came from afar. "Zhang Shi, it's you." A seven-colored flame suddenly bloomed in front of Spiritual Master Xianwei, blocking Zhang Shi's sure-kill sword attack again. Mei Tianqin Laozu, who had just returned from Middle-earth, finally arrived in time and joined hands with Lu Tianling to fight against Zhang Shi. Zhang Shi's heart couldn't help but sink again and again. The one who answered was Lu Ping. He had fought Zhang Shi before, so he was very familiar with his aura. Not to mention, Lu Ping had the 3 pure true pupils, so there was no way he would mistake Zhang Shi for someone else. Songhai sect, Zhang Shi. Celestial Elephant Laozu was so angry that he laughed. As long as he stood on the moral high ground, suppressing the Azure Sea sect would become a matter of course. At this moment, Lu Ping and the others had once again returned to the volcanic cluster. Everyone flew across the vast volcanic cluster, seizing the time to search for traces of volcanoes that might erupt. Clearly, they were pressed for time. Lu Ping looked at the huge mountain in front of him that had stopped erupting, but was still constantly rising. He turned to Lu Qiner and said, "Qiner, you go take a look at other places. After 4 hours, regardless of whether you find anything or not, immediately withdraw from this sea area." After Lu Ping said that, he took out the Na Chuan cauldron. The Na Chuan cauldron grew to a height of 3 meters in midair. Lu Ping jumped into the cauldron and fell towards the crater of the volcano. As the Na Chuan cauldron fell, although Lu Ping's body was inside the Na Chuan cauldron, he could still feel the surrounding temperature rising. It was as if his whole body had fallen into a heated pot. Lu Ping tried his best to control the speed of the Na Chuan cauldron's fall. At the same time, he also had to help the Na Chuan cauldron resist the surrounding scorching temperature. Although Lu Ping's water attribute Jinyuan had a great effect in resisting the high temperature of the surrounding magma, The Zhen Yuan around his body was being consumed at an extremely fast speed. This was because Lu Ping had not yet fallen into the magma of the crater of the volcano. If he fell in, no matter how vigorous the Zhen Yuan around Lu Ping's body was, it was unknown whether he could last for a long time. Therefore, Lu Ping had to find the spiritual fire hidden in the magma in the shortest time possible. Plop. With a muffled sound, Lu Ping felt that the entire Nachuan cauldron suddenly began to float up and down. The surrounding temperature of the cauldron walls rose again. Lu Ping could clearly feel that the consumption of his Zhen Yuan had suddenly increased. Lu Ping knew that he had fallen into the magma of the volcano. Lu Ping's divine sense quickly overflowed and extended in all directions. He even tried his best to explore the depths of the magma in an attempt to find traces of the spiritual fire. However, he found nothing. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and patted the wall of the Nachuan cauldron. A purple-blue Zhen Yuan was injected into the Nachuan cauldron. The originally continuously rising temperature was immediately alleviated. Lu Ping stamped his feet, and the Nachuan cauldron immediately sank dozens of feet into the magma. Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to have captured something. He hurriedly controlled the Nachuan cauldron to chase after it. However, he discovered that there was a fist-sized fiery red bead looming in the magma. This bead was naturally not the heaven and earth spiritual fire. However, what exactly was it? Lu Ping's current knowledge could be said to be broad. However, he did not know what this bead was. However, to be able to exist in this high-temperature magma, this bead itself could be considered a kind of treasure. Lu Ping tried his best to control his divine sense to bind this bead. Then, a dense Zhen Yuan exploded from the mouth of the Nachuan cauldron. It opened up a small space at the mouth of the cauldron. The Nachuan cauldron quickly opened up and absorbed the bead into the alchemy furnace. Lu Ping held the bead in his hand and carefully examined it. However, apart from being able to sense that this bead contained a large amount of fire attribute energy, he still could not figure out the use of this bead. The Nachuan cauldron continued to appear in the magma. Fortunately, the quality of the Nachuan cauldron was high enough. In addition, Lu Ping's water attribute Zhen Yuan happened to be able to restrain the fire attribute of the magma. Moreover, Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan was also vigorous enough. Therefore, he was able to last until now. In the blink of an eye, more than 2 hours had passed. There was only 1 hour left from the 4 hours. However, Lu Ping still had no clue about the trace of the spiritual fire. However, Lu Ping did not gain nothing during this period of time. At least, Lu Ping could sense that after he continuously poured his Zhen Yuan into the Nachuan cauldron, under the endless high temperature of the magma around the Nachuan cauldron, some impurities that he had never discovered before were slowly being purified. The quality of the Nachuan cauldron also seemed to be improving at a slow speed. Just as the Nachuan cauldron began to slowly turn red under the scorching magma, under Lu Ping's surprised gaze, a picture slowly began to appear on the inner wall of the Nachuan cauldron. It became clearer and clearer. This was Lu Ping's face was frequently intertwined with surprise and shock. In the end, he slowly restrained all his emotions. At this moment, Lu Ping's divine sense, which was scattered in the depths of the magma, suddenly felt a sharp pain. This pain was exactly the same as the feeling of being burned by the flame. Originally, although Lu Ping's divine sense was greatly affected in the magma, this influence ultimately only hindered the range of the divine sense's exploration. The magma itself did little harm to Lu Ping's divine sense. Something that could hurt Lu Ping's divine sense, even if it was not the spiritual fire, was probably some kind of rare treasure. It was enough for Lu Ping to make up his mind to explore it. Lu Ping drove the Zhen Yuan in his body, and the Nachuan cauldron sank another 100 feet. The consumption of the Zhen Yuan in his body was even more intense. The pure yang pearl in the core space could not be bothered to play around. It spat out a mouthful of origin qi, and the Zhen Yuan in Lu Ping's bloodline, which was about to be exhausted, suddenly came to life. Lu Ping's divine sense stretched out towards the depths of the magma, and finally captured the thing that could burn Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping's divine sense once again felt like it was being burned. Lu Ping's eyes suddenly lit up. This time, Lu Ping would rather endure the pain of the burning and try his best to wrap his divine sense around this thing. It really was a spiritual fire. It was actually this thing. There were several kinds of heaven and earth spiritual fires that could cause damage to divine sense. However, due to the different grades of the fire, the damage to the cultivator's divine sense also varied. However, if one were to ask what kind of spiritual fire could cause the most damage to the cultivator's divine sense, it would undoubtedly be the jade phosphorus soul fire, a high-grade heaven and earth spiritual fire. At this time, Lu Ping could no longer describe his good luck. In a volcano, he had actually found the 4-inch spiritual flame and the jade phosphorus soul fire, two extremely special spiritual fires. If this were to spread out, it was unknown how many cultivators would be envious of him. Originally, with Lu Ping's current cultivation and status, besides the heaven and earth spiritual fire needed for alchemy, most of the spiritual objects in the world were no longer of special importance to him. After all, these spiritual objects no longer had a decisive impact on the cultivator. However, for an alchemist, the 4-inch spiritual flame was one of the few flames that could arouse the interest of Lu Ping. Similarly, for a cultivator who attached great importance to the battle of divine sense, the jade phosphorus soul fire was also a kind of spiritual object that was highly valued. The uniqueness of the jade phosphorus soul fire was that it was extremely harmful to the divine sense of a cultivator. This made the jade phosphorus soul fire the best weapon for the divine sense of a cultivator. Regardless of whether it was for attack or defense, the power displayed by the jade phosphorus soul fire made all the cultivators who relied on divine sense wary of using it. Lu Ping's divine sense was already different from ordinary people. If he could refine the jade phosphorus soul fire into his divine sense, Lu Ping was confident that even a Dharma adept would not be able to hurt him in a battle of divine sense. He had to get his hands on this item. Lu Ping had an expression of throwing caution to the wind. With a sudden stomp of his feet, the Na Chuan cauldron sank again. At this time, it was already more than 100 feet deep in the magma. Even though the Na Chuan cauldron was of high quality, it had already been burned red. Lu Ping, who was in the cauldron, was sweating profusely. The heaven flower water curtain that was propped up to protect his body had already been burnt by the high temperature layer by layer. Meanwhile, Lu Ping's inner yuan was continuously being injected into it, supporting the heaven flower water curtain layer by layer. It's here. Lu Ping suddenly opened the Na Chuan cauldron. 12 gentian pearls shot out from the cauldron. A white light shot out from a white lotus that flashed behind Lu Ping. It immediately hit the seemingly illusory flame. Then, the gentian pearls surrounded the flame. Ling Long was in the depths of the wine cauldron. The Na Chuan cauldron sucked in the air, and then quickly retreated back into the Dao cauldron. The jade phosphorus soul fire finally couldn't hold on any longer and was absorbed into the Na Chuan cauldron. Lu Ping didn't have time to check on the flame that was colliding around in the Na Chuan cauldron. The Na Chuan cauldron shook and quickly shot towards the surface of the magma in the crater. Chapter 994. At the same time, in the sky above the Northwest Sea, there were already dozens of Dharma power Laozu gathered in the sky above the fire vein that celestial phenomenon Laozu was guarding. However, none of the Laozu from the various sects rushed to the bottom of the sea to search for the heaven and earth spirit fire. Instead, they waited quietly on the surface of the sea, as if waiting for one of the sects to come forward and negotiate with celestial phenomenon Laozu. It was not that they could not enter the underwater volcanoes, but after what had happened to Zhangxi, many of the Laozu had each learned their lesson. If the seal of the fire vein was broken, it would naturally be possible to bury the Jinling Dharma adept who was currently searching for the heaven and earth spirit fire in the volcanoes. However, at this time, with celestial phenomenon around, naturally no one had any ideas about the fire vein. However, what if after others entered the underwater volcanoes, Jinling suddenly withdrew and then activated the heaven and earth spirit fire? A breeze suddenly swirled on the quiet sea, and Dao Sheng Laozu suddenly appeared in front of all the Dharma adepts. "Greetings, my friend Dao Sheng. Greetings, Senior Dao Sheng." Dozens of Dharma adepts bowed together, showing the status of Daosheng Laozu in the North Sea. Although Jinling had become the #1 sect in the North Sea, and Celestial Phenomenon Laozu was also the only two Dharma adepts in the North Sea, and Xianling sect was now declining, Daosheng Laozu's reputation as the #1 person in the North Sea had not been affected in the slightest. Even if Celestial Phenomenon Laozu became a Dharma adept, it still could not shake Daosheng Laozu's position in the North Sea. Daosheng Laozu's prestige was not because of his own cultivation, but because he had killed his way out of the deep sea demon region. Over the past hundreds of years, Daosheng Laozu had always been the backbone of the human clan in resisting the attacks of the demon clan. In several one-on-one battles, he had defeated two great cultivators of the primordial giant crocodile clan. Daosheng Laozu lightly nodded his head at the crowd. After that, his silhouette flickered as he disappeared from the surface of the sea. At the location where the fire vein was sealed, Tianxiang Laozu sensed something. He abruptly raised his head and saw a spatial rift opening up in the sea several tens of feet in front of him. Daosheng Laozu stepped out from within. "Brother Tianxiang, your sect has taken the lead again. Don't let the other fellow Taoists wait for too long." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled. "Sure." After saying that, he waved his hand, and a few golden lights disappeared in a flash. He then turned around and said, "In the time it takes for an incense to burn, the old man will open the seal of the fire vein and lead it to Tianling Mountain." Looking at the pure and powerful fire vein under Tianxiang Laozu's feet, even someone like Daosheng Laozu could not help but feel a trace of jealousy in his eyes. "Brother Tianxiang is really lucky," Tianxiang Laozu said with a hint of pride. "It's just luck. No one expected that after mining a small mineral vein, a fire vein would be drawn out." Outside the tall volcano, more than 100 miles away, Lu Qiner anxiously circled around the top of the volcano. She had been holding a jade slip in her hand for 15 minutes. The 4 hours were getting closer and closer, but Lu Ping still had not come out of the crater. The underwater mountain was only a few thousand feet away from the surface. Once the fire vein seal was undone, the entire volcano chain would erupt. At that time, Lu Ping wouldn't even have a chance to escape from the crater of the volcano. Just as Lu Qiner was hesitating whether to land on the edge of the crater to take a look, a muffled sound came from the magma in the crater. Lu Qiner's first reaction was that the volcano was about to erupt, because it was already the 4-hour mark. She was about to escape with the waterproof pearl, but then she thought that if this was the case, the movement of the volcanic eruption would not be so small. Then, there was only one possibility. Lu Qiner was overjoyed. When she turned around, she saw Lu Ping coming out of the Na Chuan cauldron, his entire body looking like it was being boiled. The cauldron itself looked like it was being quenched, causing the seawater around it to sizzle. Even when Lu Ping put the cauldron back into his interspatial mystic artifact, the temperature still didn't drop. "Brother, let's go. The 4 hours are almost up." Tianxiang Laozu has already sent a communication jade slip. Compared to whether Lu Ping had obtained the spiritual fire in the volcano, Lu Qiner was obviously more concerned about Lu Ping's safety. After seeing that there were no injuries on Lu Ping's body, she handed over the jade slip she had received earlier to Lu Ping. Lu Ping was shocked. He did not care about the loss of the inner yuan in his body due to the volcanic magma. He directly put Lu Qiner into the golden house, and then turned into a stream of water and fled to the area where the fire vein was sealed. Tianxiang Laozu was guarding the fire vein. Tianfan, Tianshui, Tianlu, Tianjiang, Tianqin, and Tiancheng, 6 Dharma adepts stood behind Tianxiang Laozu. In front of him, there were more than 10 Dharma adepts from various sects led by Daosheng Laozu. "Brother Tianxiang, the time has passed. Don't let the various sects' cultivators wait too long." Daosheng Laozu was silent for a moment, and finally spoke up to urge Tianxiang. Tianxiang Laozu opened his eyes slightly and said, "There is still one person from our sect who has not returned yet. Please wait for a moment, Brother Daosheng. That Lu Tianping has not appeared yet." Could it be that he has already fallen in the volcano? Behind Daosheng Laozu, Feng Shidao could not help but speak sarcastically. As soon as he said this, The 7 Dharma adepts on Jinling's side were all angered. The aura of the 7 Dharma adepts came crashing down on Feng Shidao. Even Dao Shenglaozu did not dare to face it head-on. Feng Shidao was even forced back by the aura, and he almost fell to the ground on his, but to embarrass himself. His face was already red from holding back. 2 mid-Dharma adepts suddenly appeared in the depths of the sea. The 2 of them attacked at the same time, and together with Dao Shenglaozu, they finally managed to temporarily weaken the aura of Jinling's side. Feng Shidao was able to catch his breath, and at the same time, he raised his own aura again, intending to join the battle. These 2 mid-Dharma adepts who had just appeared and dared to join the conflict between Dao Jinling and Xianling sect were not strangers. One of them was Dong Yilaozu of the Vast Sea sect, while the other shocked many of the Dharma adepts. It was the easternmost Laozu, who had long announced that he would soon break through to the mid-Dharma stage and become a great adept. However, at this time, the easternmost Laozu's aura was overflowing, and everyone could already sense that he had not entered the late Dharma stage. He was still at the mid-Dharma stage, but it was obvious that he had reached the peak of the mid-Dharma stage. The rumor that he was about to become the 3rd great adept in the North Sea training world was not groundless after all. Seeing this, Dao Yin and Lin Shuqing also hurriedly joined the battle. Dao Shenglaozu and the easternmost Laozu's side immediately turned the tables. However, with the cooperation of the 2 Laozus, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, Jinling's side was still able to maintain a balance with the 2 sections. Right at this time, the spatial door at the bottom of the sea opened up again. Donghua and the 2 Vast Sea sect cultivators from the East Lake sect rushed over as well. One of them was at the mid-Dharma stage, while the other was at the early Dharma stage. After the 2 of them joined the battle, the tables were turned once again, and Jinling's side was now at a complete disadvantage. Just as the seal on the fire vein was about to be broken by the Dharma adepts of the Xianling and Vast Sea sect, a long whistle suddenly rang out. The faces of Jinling and the other Dharma adepts lit up with joy. A divine will that was as sharp as a flying sword slashed towards them. However, this divine will seemed to contain a burning sensation that made one's heart palpitate. Donghua and the 2 Laozus from the East Lake sect clutched their heads and cried out in pain. Sweat dripped down their foreheads as they hurriedly retreated. Lu Ping had captured the jade phosphorus sulfire. Although he had yet to fully refine it, he could already make use of it with his immense spiritual will. Although Lu Ping had relied on his powerful divine will to launch that sudden attack just now, the jade phosphorus sulfire's burning effect on the divine will had also caused Donghua and the East Lake sect to be badly frightened. This cry caused the 3 Laozus from the 3 sects to let go of each other. This was because Lu Ping's figure had already appeared at the place where the Jinling Dharma adepts were at the fire vein seal. At this time, Lu Ping looked rather haggard. The huge loss of his inner yuan had caused Lu Ping's face to look rather pale. However, when they thought about the incredible power that Lu Ping had displayed previously, the dozens of Dharma adepts at the bottom of the sea did not dare to laugh out loud or make fun of him. When Celestial Phenomenon Laozu saw that Lu Ping had returned unscathed, he smiled and said, "How are you? Do you need some time to recover?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "There's no need. That's good. My friends, please wait on the surface of the sea. After the old man removes the fire vein seal, the volcanoes will go out of control and explode. The commotion will be huge, and the danger will be even higher." After saying that, the Jinling Dharma adepts had already taken the lead and floated to the surface of the sea. Although the other adepts were a little hesitant, when they saw that the Jinling Dharma adepts had left, Dao Shang, Dao Yin, Dong Ji, Dong Yi, and the others had also left, they too started to leave. There were a few who were slower and happened to see Celestial Phenomenon Laozu remove the fire vein seal. The formation that perfected Xianwei had already set up was instantly activated, and the entire fire vein began to sink into the sea. When he reappeared, he would probably already be on Tianling Mountain. The pure fire vein contained a strong power, and the few Dharma adepts who were the last to leave looked on with envy. However, just as the fire vein was being guided, the entire sea began to shake violently. The turbulence that had occurred in the Northwest Sea previously was like a child's play compared to this. The few Dharma adepts could not even stand firm, and in an instant, they were all sent flying in all directions, drifting in the sea. Celestial phenomenon Lao Tzu reached out and waved his hand, and the few adepts who had been shaken to the core immediately stabilized their bodies in the sea. They did not even have time to thank celestial phenomenon Lao Tzu, as they all used their powers to float to the surface of the sea. Celestial phenomenon Lao Tzu took one last look in the direction of the seawater. The seawater there had already been dyed dark red, and the entire place had become a world of fire. Then, celestial phenomenon Lao Tzu's entire body disappeared in the turbulent sea. At this time, the surface of the Northwest Sea had already become a place where tsunamis were wreaking havoc. Giant waves that were tens or even hundreds of feet high were rolling and crashing in all directions. Many Dharma adepts who were closer to the Northwest Sea had a change of expression on their faces. They hurriedly sent messages back to their respective sects, instructing them to activate the protective formation to defend against the tsunamis that were hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of miles wide. Chapter 995. With the passage of time, the violent turbulence of the sea finally began to slow down. However, the rolling waves and rising steam made it seem as if the entire Northwest Sea was boiling. Lu Ping knew that this was the underwater volcano erupting. At the same time, it was also rising towards the surface of the sea. However, at this time, he could not care about the situation around him like the other Dharma adepts. At the same time, intentionally or unintentionally, he and the other Dharma adepts began to occupy their own territories in midair. After coming out from the mouth of the volcano, Lu Ping had actually used up quite a lot of his inner yuan. Fortunately, his inner yuan was much stronger than that of ordinary people. However, when he had rushed to the place where the fire vein was sealed, the inner yuan in his body had already been used up by more than half. Otherwise, he would not have needed to borrow the power of the Jade Soul Fire. Although the Jade Soul Fire was a spiritual fire of the heavens and earth, if it was not refined by true essence, it could only be used by planting a seed in this spiritual fire using divine sense. Lu Ping's body was filled with water-based inner yuan, so refining this spirit fire naturally took twice the effort for half the result. Fortunately, Lu Ping's divine will was strong, so he was able to do it with ease. Lu Ping floated in midair, holding a top-grade spirit stone in his hand as he began to recover the inner yuan in his body. At the same time, in his heart's core space, the Linglong wine cauldron was also emitting a dense mist. The dragon Dharma power opened its mouth and inhaled. This dense mist was continuously refined by the Dharma power and fed back into Lu Ping's blood. The inner yuan in his body began to recover quickly. Using top-grade spirit stones to replenish the inner yuan in one's body was a luxury even for Dharma adepts. The scarcity of top-grade spirit stones meant that Dharma adepts would usually only use top-grade spirit stones during training. Just to replenish the inner yuan in one's body, high-grade spirit stones were more than enough. However, when Lu Ping had captured He Shiyun alive, he had naturally robbed her as well. Besides the few treasures that He Shiyun had kept in his heart's core space, Lu Ping had basically taken everything from her body. Among them were 6 or 7 top-grade spirit stones, which He Shiyun had probably accumulated over the years. Now, all of them had gone to Lu Ping. Lu Ping, who had gained some extra income, naturally did not mind using a top-grade spirit stone to quickly recover his inner yuan. The North Sea cultivators were indeed incomparable to the East Ocean Crystal Palace cultivators of the same level. Back then, Lu Ping killed ancestor Kuan-Yu, who was also at the early Dharma stage, had more than 20 top-grade spirit stones on him. The difference in treatment between the two cultivators was like heaven and earth. While Celestial Lao Tzu and the others tried to expand their Jinling range in midair, they also surrounded Lu Ping to prevent him from being disturbed. At this time, a new round of struggle between the various sects and Lao Tzu had begun once again. The rising water vapor formed a thick, red poisonous fog on the surface of the sea, constantly obscuring people's vision and even hindering the detection of the adept's divine will. Fortunately, there were Dharma adepts everywhere in the sky, so they did not care too much about the poison in the fog. However, in order to expand their respective territories as much as possible, everyone still began to suppress the fog that rose from the surface of the sea. The fog was suppressed again and again, forming a layer of red poisonous fog that was 10 feet high on the surface of the sea. The tumbling seawater was already covered by the thick fog, but the tumbling fog was still able to indicate the situation at the bottom of the sea to the adepts. The seawater within a radius of 1,000 miles was boiling, and the red fog was rising. All the adepts on the surface of the sea were secretly shocked as they tried to occupy their territory. From the looks of it, the entire group of volcanoes under the sea was equivalent to a giant island with a radius of 1,000 miles. On top of it, there must be a huge mountain range. If the entire mountain range was a group of volcanoes, there must be thousands, or even tens of thousands of them. However, everyone in Jinling had already expected this, so they just blindly formed a huge encirclement in midair, constantly occupying the area above the sea. At this time, the adepts of the various sects had also reacted. Countless communication jade slips were once again sent out in all directions, beginning to call for reinforcements from their respective sections. Some of the sects that were closer to the Northwest Sea had already sent their adepts over to join in the encirclement of the various sections. However, in front of Zhenling, even excluding Lu Ping, there were still 7 Dharma adepts. The other sects, like Xianling sect and Songhai sect, were far from being able to compete with them. Just at this moment, several powerful beams of light cut into the formation that the Dharma adepts had formed on the surface of the sea, causing the cultivators of the various sects to be enraged. However, when they saw the people in the beams of light, they had no choice but to give up and cease their attacks. Wu Shihuan, Cheng Shizhuang, Ma Shifeng, and Zhang Shiji, these 4 adepts of the Crystal Palace had joined Xianling sect's camp, causing Xianling sect's power to increase greatly. The area that they occupied above the sea instantly doubled. The Dharma adepts of the neighboring sects of Xianling sect had no choice but to retreat in the face of the fierce reputation of the Crystal Palace. In an instant, the area that Xianling sect occupied exceeded that of Zhenling. Another few beams of light flew over. Dong Kuren had also rushed over with He Xiun and Wang Shiqing. Out of the 5 mid-Dharma adepts of the Songhai sect, 4 had arrived. Only Zhang Shi had not appeared until now. With 4 mid-Dharma adepts and 3 early Dharma adepts, the area that the Songhai sect occupied also expanded rapidly. However, Jinling had no intention of competing with these 2 sections. They only occupied the area of the sea according to their own rhythm. Also, unlike the other sects who occupied the area blindly, the positions of the few Laozu of Jinling on the sea were much more orderly. However, it was fortunate that the other sects did not want to clash with Jinling at this time. Once there was any conflict with Jinling's area, they would immediately retreat far away. Even so, there were still many sects who had begun to move closer to Jinling, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and slowly formed a loose encirclement around the perimeter. Other than the Jinling adept, Zhangjian, who had seen the full picture of the underwater volcanoes, no one from the other sects had ever seen the true nature of the underwater volcanoes. Now that they saw Jinling's arrangement to occupy the sea, they naturally knew that Jinling was purposely encircling some of the more valuable volcanoes into their own area of influence. The volcanoes that Jinling had set his sights on in the future might not be as good as Jinling's volcanoes, but at least they would be much better than their own random encirclement, relying entirely on luck. At this time, 2 beams of light came rushing over from the sea in the distance. At this time, almost all the Dharma adepts from the various sects had arrived. As the various sects occupied their own areas of influence, they all turned their attention to these 2 beams of light. The first person turned into a hurricane. When his entire body stopped, a gust of wind blew past, almost causing the crimson poisonous fog that had been suppressed and condensed by the tens of Dharma adepts below his feet to swirl again. Zhenling, Liang Tianfeng. At this time, perhaps only Zhenling had the energy to spare to send out a Dharma adept. However, Liang Tianfeng's appearance only caused many of the Laozu present to sigh a little. The Dharma adept behind Liang Tianfeng was the one who once again shocked the entire North Sea Street. Jinren Xianxin, no, it should be Laozu Tianxin now. After decades of training and seclusion, Jinren Xianxin, who had also condensed a 7th-grade golden core, had finally broken through the final barrier and become Jinling's 15th Dharma adept. 15 Dharma adepts. This was a huge force. Even the powerful Fei Ling sect only had 18 Dharma adepts in the past. At that moment, the various Laozu sects in the entire North Sea all had different thoughts. The various sects, which had originally been competitive with each other, all became dispirited. On the other hand, Jinling's power had increased greatly because of the addition of 2 Dharma adepts. The area of the sea that it controlled increased again and again, and the sects that had gathered around Jinling also subconsciously avoided Jinling's expansion. Although there was a thick layer of crimson fog covering the surface of the sea, at that moment, a series of water columns began to erupt from the surface of the sea, forcing Laozu sects who were floating on the surface of the sea to increase their altitude as much as possible in order to avoid the water columns that were shooting towards them. Before the boiling hot seawater could return to the sea, it had already turned into water vapor and dissipated, leaving only puffs of crimson poisonous fog that filled the air. Then, they were once again suppressed into the crimson fog layer on the surface of the sea by the adepts. At that moment, Lu Ping, who had been floating in the air recovering his inner yuan, suddenly jolted, as if he had received some news. He suddenly raised his head and said, "It's coming, be careful." After saying that, he took the lead and continued to increase his altitude from the surface of the sea. A clear cry sounded, and Lu Qiner transformed into a green phoenix. Carrying Lu Ping on her back, she began to circle above the surface of the sea. What a divine blue Luan mount! The various sects did not have time to exclaim. Those who reacted quickly, knowing that the underwater volcano was about to rise from the surface of the sea, also hurriedly prepared to attack. However, what the crowd waited for was not the volcano rising from the surface of the sea. Instead, the volcano began to erupt tens of feet from the surface of the sea with fiery lava. A Dharma adept could not dodge in time and was instantly hit by a column of fire. His entire body screamed in pain, and he cast more than 10 protective spells. However, by the time the people beside him managed to save him, he looked like he was on the verge of death, and no one knew if he would be able to recover. Although there were a few other Dharma adepts who managed to avoid the pillars of fire that shot out from the bottom of the sea, they were still burnt to a sorry state by the high temperature of the flames. The cultivators of the various sects all turned pale with fright. They did not expect that the lava that the volcano spewed out would have such power. No wonder that Jinling cultivator could fly so high. They had already been prepared for this. The various sects cultivators all began to fly high above the surface of the sea. At that moment, pillars of fire began to shoot up from the bottom of the sea. From afar, it looked as if the entire sea was on fire. Hundreds of pillars of fire covered an area of about 1,000 miles on the vast surface of the sea. Indeed, it was the size of a huge island. And as these hundreds of pillars of fire turned into thick volcanic ash and began to fall towards the surface of the sea in front of them suddenly welcomed a moment of silence. Just as everyone was wondering what was happening, a low rumbling sound suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. It was as if a monster hidden at the bottom of the sea was about to rush out of the sea. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. The splashes of water became more and more frequent, and the cultivators of the various sects became more and more anxious. At that moment, almost 100 beams of light suddenly lit up from the red fog that covered the entire surface of the sea. "It's coming out! It's coming out!" Nearly 100 streaks of light suddenly broke through the crimson mist and fled in all directions. Chapter 996. Hundreds of spiritual fires suddenly rushed out from the sea within a radius of 1,000 miles, causing many Dharma adepts to cry out in alarm as they fled in all directions. The North Sea adepts had never seen so many spiritual objects of heaven and earth, and these spiritual fires were the most precious among all spiritual objects. With the spiritual fires suddenly flying around in front of them, some of the weak-willed adepts were even stunned for a moment. Other than a few Dharma adepts, almost all the other adepts began to fight for these spiritual fires that were flying around randomly. Previously, many of the adepts had their own territories on the sea, with the exception of a few major sects, but the rest could no longer be maintained. Celestial Elephant Laozu and Dao Sheng Laozu took the lead. Celestial Elephant Laozu suddenly made his move, and in an instant, more than 10 shadows of arms appeared in the sky, and in an instant, 7 spiritual fires were caught in his hands. On the other side, Dao Sheng Laozu did even more. Similarly, more than 10 mysterious winds were peeled off from his body, and the 8 spiritual fires had already been caught by these small whirlwinds, and then, one by one, they fell into Dao Sheng Laozu's hands. Following closely behind these two were the 2 Jinling Laozu and the East Pole Laozu. Tian Fan and Tian Shui worked together to capture 6 spiritual fires, while the East Pole Laozu also captured 4 spiritual fires. However, when the East Pole Laozu turned to look, he saw that the Jinling Lu Tianping had also caught 4 spiritual fires. How could this be? The East Pole Laozu's expression quickly turned gloomy. In fact, the moment Lu Ping made his move, the harvest was not much different from the other mid-Dharma adepts, and they were all aiming for 3 spiritual fires. However, at the moment when Lu Ping made his move, the avatar Lu Xiaoping, who was holding Lu Ping's aqua sword, also made his move, snatching a spiritual fire back before a Ling Gu sect adept could. The rest of the mid-Dharma adepts had only managed to get 2 or 3 flames. Some of the more unlucky ones had only managed to get 1. However, the adepts at the mid-Dharma stage and above had basically all managed to get their hands on something, and there were no signs of them returning empty-handed. In an instant, almost 100 kindling seeds were divided up by the dozens of Dharma adepts. Jinling used the advantage of his position and the fact that he had the most number of Dharma adepts. In one fell swoop, he obtained 23 kindling seeds, which was about a quarter of the total number of spiritual fires. Everyone had at least 1 kindling. Next was the alliance of Xinling Sect and Water Crystal Palace, who had obtained more than 10 spirit fires in one go. The Blue Sea Sect had obtained close to 10. These 3 forces alone had split close to half of the spirit fires that had flown out of the sea. The surface of the sea fell silent once again. The adepts who had harvested could not wait to check their own gains. Only then did they realize that among the eruption of kindling seeds, a portion of them were not spiritual fires, but mystical item kindling seeds. Although they were still considered precious, other than a few extremely special existences, most mystical item kindling could not compare to the spiritual fires themselves. Jinling's 20 over kindling seeds were mixed with 6 mystical item kindling. Out of the 17 kindling seeds, 10 were of the mystic grade, while the remaining 7 were of the earth grade. 2 of them were of the earth grade. One was obtained by Tianxiang Laozu, the other was obtained by Tiancheng Laozu, and the remaining 2 were of the earth grade from Tianfan and Tian Shui. The 2 of them were of the earth grade. Out of the 4 kindling seeds that Lu Ping obtained, 2 were of the earth grade, and the last one was obtained by Tian Lu Laozu. At this moment, a cry of surprise came from Xinling sect. A black-red flame flashed and disappeared. It turned out that among the 8 kindling seeds that Dao Sheng Laozu had obtained, there was a heaven-grade inferior grade spiritual fire. It could be said to be one of the highest quality kindling seeds in this wave of spiritual fires. However, other than this kindling, the alliance between Xinling sect and the Crystal Palace's luck was not too good. Out of the 10 kindling seeds, only 2 were of the earth grade inferior grade, the rest were of the mystic grade and mystical item kindling. Songhai sect's harvest was considered average, but the other sects were lucky enough to obtain a heaven grade inferior grade or even a heaven grade inferior grade spiritual fire. There were also some cultivators who fought with each other for the spiritual items of heaven and earth. The rumbling sound from the bottom of the sea was getting closer and closer. The seawater began to surge violently. The waves broke through the thick red fog on the surface of the sea and shattered in midair, sparkling with a sparkling light. After the waves subsided, The cultivators then realized that, unbeknownst to them, there was already boiling magma on the surface of the sea. Boom, boom, boom. A series of booming sounds reverberated throughout the entire world as columns of smoke and fire shot up into the sky. The entire sky was first filled with red-colored waves of fire. Even the cultivators who were flying at a higher altitude had no choice but to utilize various methods to avoid the impact of the waves of fire. Next, thick volcanic ash drifted up into the sky, obscuring the vision of the Dharma stage cultivators and restricting the use of their divine senses. Poof! A spiritual fire of heaven and earth suddenly jumped out of the fire wave, then escaped under the cover of the thick volcanic ash. However, very quickly, this spiritual fire was noticed by a few Dharma adepts nearby who were using their own defensive methods. A few of them tried to catch this spiritual fire, but it was inevitable that they would collide with each other in midair. The magical spells of several Dharma adepts clashed with each other, the power of which was no weaker than the violent eruption of a volcano. Although this spiritual fire was very spiritual, under such a powerful attack, it could no longer maintain its spiritual nature. The flame flickered a few times, but in the end, it was completely extinguished. An earth-grade spiritual fire was wasted just like that. From time to time, the same scene played out in the sky above the sea. Laozu from the various sects would usually retreat after a single attack, and there would not be a situation where they would fight to the death. However, it was rare for the cultivators to completely extinguish the spiritual fire because they could not control it. Most of the cultivators were still able to take care of these things when fighting for the spiritual fire and still managed to gain something from it. At this time, Lu Ping had already caught 2 spiritual fires in the midst of the waves of fire and the volcanic ash. However, the quality of these fires was not too high. They were both low to mid-grade profound grade. This was also because Lu Ping's divine will was far stronger than others. He was always one step ahead of others to find the fire seeds hidden in the waves of fire or volcanic ash. It was just that his luck was a little bad, and he did not find a high-grade spiritual fire. Lu Ping swam around the area, looking for the hidden spiritual fires of heaven and earth. At the same time, he tried his best to protect the area that Jinling had previously occupied. From time to time, he would use hidden confrontations to force the other Dharma adepts who were wandering around to retreat. It was not that Lu Ping was waiting for his prey. It was because Jinling had done a general survey of the underwater volcanoes beforehand. He was able to confirm that the volcanic mountain range under the sea that they had occupied now was the place with the highest number of volcanoes in the entire volcanic region. At the same time, it was very likely that it was the place where all kinds of fire-type spiritual materials were gathered. If it was just for the spiritual fires of heaven and earth that were spat out during the volcanic eruptions, the various sects would not have started to occupy the underwater volcanic region in advance. In reality, the underwater volcanic region that had been nurtured for who knew how many years did not only contain the spiritual fires of heaven and earth that were already, about to be, or still hidden. Other than that, there were also various spiritual material mines, fire veins, and other fire-type treasures that were born in the volcanoes. All in all, to the entire North Sea training world, this volcanic region was equivalent to a virgin land that had not been developed by anyone. Its value might even be higher than the spirit stone mines on Frost Island. In the long run, compared to wandering around to collect spiritual fires of heaven and earth and firmly occupying a large area of volcanic region, Jinling naturally valued the latter more. However, in reality, it was precisely because Jinling had a large number of Dharma adepts and a large area of influence that even though Jinling did not go around searching for spiritual materials like the other sects, the actual harvest that Jinling obtained was much more than the other sections. Just as Lu Ping, with great difficulty, discovered a mid-grade earth-level spiritual fire hidden in an extremely thick layer of volcanic ash. He turned into a stream of water and broke through the protection of the still hot volcanic ash. After he had completely grasped the spiritual fire in his hands, a few miles behind Lu Ping, 2 vigorous forces suddenly rose and entangled with each other. Lu Ping was shocked. In the North Sea, there were only two great Dharma adepts, Tianxiang and Dao Sheng, who could cause Lu Ping to feel shocked. If ordinary Dharma adepts encountered such a scene, they would all hide as far away as possible. Even the adepts of Jinling and Xinling sect would do the same. This was because ordinary mid-Dharma adepts often did not have the right to participate in a battle between great Dharma adepts. Otherwise, they would often become a burden to their own Dharma adepts. However, Jinling had two mid-Dharma adepts who could join forces and still participate in a battle of this level. Lu Ping's powerful divine will had already detected that the two mid-Dharma adepts had already merged into one. With an aura that was slightly weaker than that of the two great Dharma adepts, they quickly headed towards the place where the two were clashing. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, but he could not shake off the curiosity of wanting to see the battle between great Dharma adepts. In the end, he gritted his teeth and moved his body, heading towards the center of the two rising auras. Although the battle of auras between Tianxiang Laozu and Dao Sheng Laozu was getting more and more intense, the battle between the two was very casual. They did not attack each other, but only focused on the scarlet flame floating between them. Heaven-level mid-grade, mother-child geocentric fire. So it was this thing. No wonder the two great Dharma adepts would fight for it. At this time, it was clear that Dao Sheng Laozu had a slight advantage. The distance between the mother-child geocentric fire and Dao Sheng Laozu was slightly closer than the distance between it and Tianxiang Laozu. On the other side, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, who were rushing over, were unexpectedly blocked by a volcano that suddenly rose from the sea. Then, they heard the loud sound of waves behind them. When they turned around, they saw that the East Pole Laozu and Dao Shin Laozu had joined forces to attack Tian Fan and Tian Shui. Lu Ping was wearing the Cloud Glow 5 Elements robe. Using the volcanic dust as a cover, he sneaked all the way to the vicinity. He did not dare to use his divine will to investigate, so he could only use the three pure true eyes to look in the direction where Tianxiang and Dao Sheng were fighting. Chapter 997. As a whole, the Mother and Sun Flames could be considered to be a mid-grade heaven-rank spirit treasure. But under certain conditions, it could only be considered to be a low-grade heaven-rank spirit treasure. The difference between them was the profundities of the Mother and Sun Flames. The Mother-Child Earth Fire could split. Once the Earth Fire as a whole began to split, the grade of the Earth Fire as the parent body would drop to the heaven-rank lower grade. Similarly, 3 Earth-rank upper-grade second-generation spiritual fires would appear. However, the splitting of the Mother and Child Earth Fire did not stop there. The 3 Earth-rank upper-grade second-generation fire would continue to split. Each child fire would split into 3 mystic-rank upper-grade third-generation fire. In this way, there would be 9 mystic-rank upper-grade third-generation fire. At the same time, the 3 Earth-rank upper-grade second-generation fire would drop to Earth-rank middle-grade after splitting. The reason why this Mother and Child core fire, which had yet to split apart, was worth the 2 Dharma adepts fighting over was not only because of the quality of the fire, but also because it could be used to practice a powerful fire-based spell formation that had been passed down in the world of practitioners for a long time but was rarely mastered. Inferno burning the heavens. There were a total of 13 Child Mother core fires after they were split, and there was an extremely mysterious connection between them. There was once a formation master in the world of cultivation who was inspired by this, and spent more than 100 years to create this Inferno sky-burning Inferno formation. Once it was put to use, it displayed a great deal of power. This formation master, who was only at the early Dharma stage, was able to trap and kill a late Dharma stage great practitioner, causing the Inferno sky-burning Inferno formation to shake the world of cultivation. After that, although the heaven-burning Inferno formation rarely appeared in the cultivation world, it was only because the mother-child geocentric fire was rarely found in the cultivation world. However, the cultivation inheritance of the heaven-burning Inferno formation was not lost. Jinling was in the Yingtian Dojo, and Xinling sect was in the Yingtian Dojo because they once had a foundation that far surpassed Jinling's. The battle between Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and Dao Sheng Laozu naturally attracted the attention of many cultivators. However, under the obstruction of the thick volcanic ash and the violent eruption of magma, few people dared to come over and watch the battle between the two supreme cultivators. Right now, Dao Sheng Laozu had already gained a slight advantage. Celestial phenomenon Laozu stretched his hands out as a formless energy gushed forth from all directions, coiling around the spiritual fire in the air. However, Dao Sheng Laozu pushed out with his hands as countless sharpness manifested in the air, shooting out in all directions, slashing apart the energy that celestial phenomenon Laozu created in the air. Once again, the mother and child core fire remained suspended in the air. Dao Sheng Laozu had stopped celestial phenomenon Laozu's attack on the spiritual fire. Instead, he turned around and hooked two of his fingers towards the spiritual fire. The mother and child core fire once again moved towards Dao Sheng Laozu's direction. From afar, another two explosive sounds could be heard. The East Pole Laozu and Dao Xin Laozu had joined forces, but under the combined attack of the two Laozu, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, they were forced to retreat. However, the two of them still tried their best to delay Tian Fan and Tian Shui, not allowing them to rush over to help. Especially since the East Pole Laozu was a cultivator at the peak of the Middle Dharma realm. With his cultivation, if it was a one-on-one situation, neither Tian Shui nor Tian Fan would be a match for him. Celestial phenomenon Laozu stretched out his finger and flicked it. A strong wind swirled in midair, as though it had become soft and flexible. It wrapped around Dao Sheng Laozu's hidden force and pulled it taut. The two Dharma realm cultivators were now in a contest of strength against the mother and child core fire. Dao Sheng Laozu pulled towards his side, while celestial phenomenon Laozu pulled at the same time. The two hidden forces immediately shattered the surrounding space. Bang! The two hidden forces were torn apart at the same time. The mother and child core fire suddenly lost control and immediately bounced upwards. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly appeared in between the two Grand Realm cultivators. With a stretch of his hand, he grabbed the mother and child core fire in his hand. At this moment, the two Grand Realm cultivators' hidden forces suddenly burst forth. Following closely behind, they rushed towards Lu Ping, who had suddenly appeared above the spiritual fire. "You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth," Dao Sheng Laozu said coldly when he saw the sudden appearance of Lu Ping, who actually wanted to take advantage of the two Grand Realm cultivators. Nonsense. Celestial phenomenon Laozu, on the other hand, was a little anxious. He suddenly grabbed towards the sky, as though he wanted to offset the hidden force as much as possible. However, at this moment, Dao Sheng Laozu seemed to have predicted that celestial phenomenon Laozu was going to make a move. Similarly, a gust of wind rose, dispelling celestial phenomenon Laozu's grab. Dao Sheng Laozu did not attack Lu Ping, but he blocked celestial phenomenon Laozu's rescue. It was clear that he wanted Lu Ping to suffer such a hidden loss. At this time, there was no room for Lu Ping to dodge. However, since Lu Ping dared to be the fisherman in the battle between the two Grand Realm cultivators, he was naturally prepared for this. Lu Ping suppressed the mother and child core fire in his hand with one hand, and suddenly pressed down with the other. Similarly, a hidden force slammed down from above. This hidden force was like waves crashing down one after another. However, the hidden force that erupted from above was like countless scattered torrents, completely disintegrating the surging force of Lu Ping, and then continued to hit Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping's body did a somersault in midair, and a cloud sail appeared, wrapping around Lu Ping's body. Several hidden forces hit the cloud sail. The countless auspicious clouds that surged on the surface of the cloud sail were all dispersed, revealing the weapon spirit, the golden-winged roc, who was hiding behind the cloud sail. The golden-winged roc let out a startled cry and flapped its wings. Auspicious clouds once again gathered around its body, and at the same time, the cloud sail began to fold up, using its body to withstand the hidden forces of the two Dharma adepts. However, Lu Ping himself was still sent flying by the hidden forces in midair, crashing into 3 pillars of fire. However, the cloud sail was, after all, a spirit-grade protective treasure, and its protective magic power had already been successfully condensed. Although Lu Ping was hit by the hidden forces to the point of vomiting, he still managed to withstand it. The surrounding cultivators who were secretly observing the battle between the two Laozu all gasped. Dao Sheng Laozu looked coldly at Lu Ping in the distance, and his figure retreated. At the same time, a cloud of volcanic ash came, covering Dao Sheng Laozu's figure. When the volcanic ash dissipated, Dao Sheng Laozu had already retreated and disappeared. In the distance, Lu Ping finally managed to stop. When he returned, he would inevitably be reprimanded by Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, and the Mother and Child Core Fire was also handed over to Celestial Phenomenon Laozu. Although the Mother and Child Core Fire was very powerful, it was not particularly suitable for pill concoction or artifact forging. It also did not possess the magical effect of burning divine scents like the Jade Phosphorus Soulfire. Although it could be used to set up the Inferno Purgatory Sky Incineration Array, it was not suitable for cultivators like Lu Ping, who cultivated water-type cultivation techniques. As time went on, more and more volcanoes broke through the surface of the ocean. However, the number of volcanoes that were still erupting was gradually decreasing. A thick layer of crimson fog covered the surface of the ocean, and the silhouette of a massive island gradually took shape on the surface of the ocean. Lu Ping hovered high up in the sky while Lu Qiner hovered around Lu Ping, never leaving Lu Ping's line of sight. Big Brother. The volcano on the lower left is about to erupt. When Lu Ping heard this, he turned around and landed in the air 3 miles away from the mountain peak. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the belly of the mountain, and an orange-red flame suddenly exploded on the peak of the mountain. Dark red magma, accompanied by thick volcanic ash, rushed into the sky. Lu Ping's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. At the moment when the volcano erupted, he had already captured 2 relatively strong auras of spiritual fire. The thin water long stream sword broke the flowing magma in one fell swoop. An emerald green flame was about to escape, but it was fished out by Lu Ping from the broken magma. Lu Ping's face was filled with joy. It was actually a heaven lower grade spiritual fire. This was one of the few heaven lower grade spiritual fires obtained during the eruption of the volcanic group in the Northwest Sea region. At this moment, a huge gray bird suddenly rushed out of the scorching volcanic ash on the other side. Lu Qiner shook her body, shook off all the volcanic ash that fell on her body, and restored the beautiful body of Qing Wan. Although Lu Qiner couldn't directly dive into the depths of the magma to capture the hidden spiritual fire like Lu Ping, Lu Qiner herself was a Qing Wan who was proficient in fire. She had a natural affinity for volcanoes, and she could be immune to most of the fire damage. Lu Qiner opened her mouth and spat out a cluster of flames. It was a heaven and earth spiritual fire that she had caught from the magma that soared into the sky. Its quality had reached the middle grade of earth rank. Since Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and Dao Sheng Laozu directly fought for the mother-child geocentric fire, the eruption of this volcano seemed to be coming to an end, and the appearance of heaven and earth spiritual fires became fewer and fewer. Despite this, the Laozu of various sects still didn't give up and stayed in the air. At this time, Lu Ping relied on Lu Qiner's natural affinity for volcanoes to find 4 volcanoes that were about to erupt, and at the moment when the volcanoes erupted, he snatched 3 spiritual fires and 3 mystical fires from them before the other Laozu. Such means made many Laozu of various sects secretly jealous to death. In addition to the emerald green heaven rank spiritual fire that he had now obtained, Lu Ping alone had obtained 11 spiritual fires and the kindling of 3 mystical fires. Among them, the highest grade was a heaven rank spiritual fire, and there were also 3 earth rank kindling. The rest were all profound rank kindling. This kind of harvest had far exceeded the middle Dharma Laozu of various sections. Even the East Pole Laozu could not compare to him. Only the 2 middle Dharma Laozu, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, and the 2 great practitioners, Tian Xiang and Dao Sheng, could surpass Lu Ping in terms of harvest. The volcanic ash in the sky had already gradually dissipated under the various methods of the Laozu of various sections. The dull roar from the bottom of the sea was still ringing, and the earthquake was still ongoing. However, the eruption of the volcano had gradually stopped. A thick layer of red fog that covered the surface of the sea had also spread over the entire giant island that had appeared on the surface of the sea along with the rise of the volcanoes. The fog had also spread over the entire island, and this thick fog no longer evaporated, but because of the expansion, it became a little lighter. The giant island that was covered with volcanoes finally appeared on the surface of the sea. Chapter 998. The eruption of the volcanoes gradually came to a stop as the huge island rose from the bottom of the sea. However, the magma at the crater was still boiling, and thick smoke billowed into the sky, shrouding the entire island in a layer of gray fog. Everyone knew that there might be a large number of heaven and earth spirit fires hidden in this huge volcanic cluster, but Lao Tzu did not have the time or energy to find out exactly where they were. He could not wait here for them to come out, so the rest of the task of exploring this island was left to the other Earth Stage adepts in the sect. At this time, the cultivators of the various sects finally realized that the 10 Dharma adepts of Junling had already occupied an area of a few hundred miles from the coast of the huge volcanic cluster to the inside of the island. They had roughly occupied about 1/5 of the area of the huge volcanic cluster, and this area was the area where the volcanoes were the most densely distributed. When the cultivators of the various sects saw this, their teeth itched with hatred, but there was nothing they could do. Not to mention the fact that Junling had a general understanding of the underwater volcanic cluster in advance. Just the strength displayed by the large number of Dharma adepts was enough to make the various sects hesitate to take action. However, before the various sects cultivators could secretly think of all kinds of strange ideas, there were already more than 10 rays of light in the sky flying towards the huge volcanic cluster. The cultivators of the various sects swept out with their divine senses, and a moment later, all kinds of complicated expressions appeared on their faces. After receiving the news that the volcanic cluster in the Northwest Sea was gradually calming down, Junling's fire-based adepts, as well as those who were not fire-based adepts but were alchemists and craftsmen, had already set out on Floating Island, just in time to arrive at the scene. If it was said that Junling's few Lao Tzu had first occupied the most important part of this vast giant island, now that these disciples had arrived in time, they had actually occupied it. The cultivators of the various sects had no choice but to admit it. Lu Ping jumped out and stopped the dozens of Junling adepts who were about to enter the volcanic cluster, saying, "The giant volcanic cluster is filled with a poisonous fog condensed by the fire poison, which has a subtle impact on the cultivator's inner yuan. If you stay here for too long, I'm afraid it will be detrimental to your future cultivation. This fire poison is extremely difficult to deal with, but I have a kind of poisonous fire here that can restrain the poisonous fog in the volcanic cluster. If you think you are not prepared, you can take a poisonous fire from me to avoid the poison. When you return from the volcanic cluster, you can just exchange the fire." A poison that could make even an alchemist feel difficult to deal with naturally made the dozens of Junling adepts at the core forging stage feel uneasy. Seeing Lu Ping hold a jet-black flame in his hand, and then with a slight shake, dozens of sparks splashed out from the flame and turned back into small flames. Many of the adepts stepped forward to take a small flame and hang it in front of them. After that, they began to occupy the area that Lao Tzu had marked out. After the cultivators from Junling's sect fell into the volcanic region, the scarlet-red poisonous mist converged upon the poisonous flame on each cultivator's waist. Gradually, an area free of the poisonous mist was formed around each cultivator. At the same time, the bean-sized flame on each cultivator's waist flickered. It appeared to have become even more active. Seeing that the Junling adepts were so busy, Junling's excited cheers came from the island from time to time. It seemed that the cultivation resources on this island were so abundant that everyone bowed to them. This made Lao Tzu both excited and envious. They were excited because Junling's abundant cultivation resources would once again usher in a great increase after the large spirit stone mine on Frost Island. They were envious because Junling was always able to get ahead of the other sections. Although the Lao Tzu of the various sects had roughly divided up the entire volcanic cluster, the boundaries between them were not clear. This gave the adepts under Junling the leeway to take advantage of the opportunity to expand their own territory. As for the other sects that bordered Zhenling, Lao Tzu could not say anything. Just as Zhenling had begun to delineate the boundaries of this virgin land, set up formations, explore the terrain, and check out the various rare treasures hidden within the volcanic cluster, the cultivators from the other sects finally arrived. Under Lao Tzu's reminder, the scarlet poisonous fog that permeated the volcanic island also attracted the attention of the cultivators from the various sections. The cultivators from the various sects were also prepared for this. Almost all of them carried poison-dispelling pills, antidotes, and the like. However, these cultivators clearly did not have a deep understanding of the poisonous fog like Lu Ping. Not long after they confidently charged into the volcanic cluster, some cultivators with low cultivation bases ran out in panic. There were also some whose bodies were burning hot. Clearly, they had been poisoned by the fire poison. Soon after, some mid- and late-core forging cultivators with decent cultivation bases gradually could not withstand the corrosion of the scarlet poisonous fog and retreated one after another. In less than 2 hours, nearly 100 cultivators from the various sects who had arrived earlier had all retreated from the volcanic cluster. Many of them had their inner yuan eroded by the fire poison. There were even some who were so deeply corroded by the fire poison that they needed the help of their sect's Lao Tzu in order to neutralize it. At this time, the cultivators from the various sects finally understood why Lu Tianping had taken this matter so seriously. It turned out that the fire poison was actually so difficult to deal with. However, the fire poison itself did not have much of an effect on cultivators who had achieved the Dharma stage. Among the Dharma stage cultivators from the various sects, there were almost no cultivators who had such attainments in alchemy like Lu Ping. Due to their underestimation of the situation, they all suffered greatly. However, there were also some meticulous cultivators who discovered that the poison-dispelling pills that they had taken were not completely useless. At least, they could resist the invasion of the fire poison for a certain period of time. The cultivators from the various sects were busy again. In addition to sending messages to their respective sects alchemists to deal with the fire poison, they also had to send cultivators to test the effects of various poison-dispelling pills on resisting the fire poison and the exact duration of its effects. This period of busyness lasted until the second day. Only then did the cultivators from the various sects begin to regroup and enter Scarlet Mist Island. However, there were only a few cultivators who could enter Scarlet Mist Island on such a large scale and for such a long period of time as Zhenling. Perhaps it was because these cultivators had consumed some extremely rare antidote pills, or they had cultivated some special cultivation technique or secret technique, or they had some kind of antidote treasures on them. None of these cultivators were as relaxed as the cultivators of Zhenling's sect, who carried the dark prison poisonous fire around their waists. Although the black prison poison fire was a relatively rare type of wondrous fire, there were quite a number of cultivators who could recognize it. Additionally, although the North Sea was barren, it still had tens of thousands of years of heritage. Quite a number of sects had this poison fire in their possession. At the very least, when Scarlet Mist Island emerged from the surface of the sea, a cultivator managed to obtain a black prison poison fire. However, regardless of whether it was the black prison poison fire seed stored by some sects or the black prison poison fire seed discovered on Scarlet Mist Island, they could move unimpeded through Scarlet Mist Island after refining the black prison poison fire seed. However, none of them could create hundreds of poison-dispelling flames like Lu Ping's black prison poison fire, allowing the many cultivators from the sect to benefit from it. By then, however, Zhenling's second batch of cultivators to enter Scarlet Mist Island had arrived from Celestial Spirit Mountain. After receiving the black prison poison fire seed from Lu Ping, they entered Scarlet Mist Island once again. Zhenling's territory on the island had increased from less than 1/5 of the original area to more than 1/5 of the original area. The various sects Lao Tzu began to evacuate one after another. Zhenling left behind 2 Lao Tzu, Tiancheng and Tianqin, to guard Scarlet Mist Island. At the same time, he commanded the disciples to continue developing the island. As for Tianfeng Lao Tzu, he returned to Central Plains. Lao Tzu, who had just condensed his Dharma idol not long ago, returned to Celestial Spirit Mountain to continue his cultivation in seclusion. Lu Ping left the black prison poison fire for Tianqin Laozu to use temporarily. At the same time, it was also to make it convenient for the disciples on the island to hand over the saturated fire seed. After the black prison poison fire had absorbed and neutralized the poison within, it would split into a new fire seed for the disciples to take away. At the same time, Tianqin Laozu also had to study the scarlet fire poison on Scarlet Mist Island and concoct a poison repellent pill that could adapt to Scarlet Mist Island. As for Tiancheng Laozu, he had obtained the mother-child geocentric fire and was preparing to concoct the heaven-burning hellfire array. If he could successfully concoct this array, with Tiancheng's abilities, its power would be even greater than a supreme magic. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. On this day, Lu Ping was giving a lecture to the disciples on Huangli Island. With the eldest disciple Wang Xuanqi as the leader, Tian Xinyue, Du Xinluo, Fang Xianwei, Fang Xuanxia, and Zheng Xuanwu, the 6 personal disciples and several disciples were sitting in order. Just as they were listening to the impromptu lecture, Lu Ping suddenly stopped talking. All the disciples were confused. As the eldest disciple, Wang Xuanqi was about to open his mouth to ask, but he heard Lu Ping say, "Let's stop here for today. Your martial uncle Lei Delay has already condensed the Dharma idol. Remember to go and congratulate him after the lecture ends." After saying that, Lu Ping's figure had already disappeared from the cave residence. In a secret underground room on Huangli Island that was opened up by Debao, a branch of the Huangli Island's spirit vein opened up and led directly to this place. An unparalleled aura crashed against the seal formation in the secret room. However, the waves of aura and spiritual chi that rushed up were all blocked by the seal formation in the secret room. Instead, the secret room accumulated a dense amount of spiritual chi, almost to the point of squeezing out water. Sixth brother Lei, who was sitting cross-legged in the secret room, seemed to have sensed something. He began to restrain the aura on his body as much as possible. However, he had just broken through to the next level of cultivation, so he could not completely control the situation of his body. This caused the aura around him to become extremely unstable. A space door gradually formed, and Lu Ping slowly walked out of the door. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, Brother Lei, for finally achieving the Dharma idol." Sixth brother Lei smiled faintly and said, "I originally advanced to the peak of the core forging realm before you did. It took me nearly 100 years to advance to the Dharma idol. However, whether it is in terms of cultivation or strength, you have already left me far behind. What is there to celebrate?" Sixth brother Lei stood up and stretched his arms and legs. Then, he looked around and said, "Your wife's method of setting up the formation is getting better and better. The seal formation in this secret room cannot be broken even with the power of the aura that I gathered when I condensed the Dharma idol." Lu Ping was about to say something, but he paused for a moment. He stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion in front of him. A space door was torn open by Lu Ping, and a message jade slip was taken out by Lu Ping. The jade slip only contained a message from Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Zhang Shi has arrived in the East Sea. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.